15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get started. My name's Alan Wernick. You know, they always have me come after lunch to sort of wake you up a little bit, give you the hot topics. Today we're doing hot topics and naturalization, all right? Now, one of the things that's happened is, you know, the Immigration Service taking the position you have to have a valid green card in order to naturalize. Of course, the theory that around that is that if you're a permanent resident, you're supposed to carry with you, actually physically with you, an unexpired permanent resident card. Nobody ever gets penalized for it, but you're supposed to. So they used to say, well, if you called them and asked them, do I need a new card? They'd say, yes, you do. But then if you didn't have a new card, they'd still naturalize you, right? In other words, they say you needed it, but your card expired. Now, in different parts of the country, they were saying you had to have it, you had it. Now in New York, apparently they're saying you had to have it. So what we're saying is the best practice is you need to have a card that is must have unexpired card at the time you apply for naturalization, and you must apply, this is sort of not clear the way I wrote it, but you must have a card at the time you file your application. It must not be within 6 months of expiring. So if your card is already expired, or if your card will expire within 6 months, you need to file an I-90. You can file the I-90, which is the form for the card, with your naturalization. And you do not have to have the approval. Follow me? It's just they want you to file. It's a thing they have. It's nuts. Because they have all your documents in the file. They don't need to know that you have a card. The card is just evidence of permanent residence, with or without the card. It's like if I don't have a passport, I'm still a U.S. citizen, right? If you don't have a card, you're still a permanent resident. That being said, so what we're telling people is they have to file an I-90. Now, of course, we do that for free. And if you, just like with the naturalization form, N-400, if you have an inability to pay the fee, you can file for free, okay? Now, if you are filed your, it's just a little note, you don't have to have the card issued. Let's say you file the I-90 to get a new card, but you need to travel. You can go with your passport, make an appointment through InfoPass, which is a way to make an appointment to see a live person at immigration. They'll stamp your passport with proof that you are a permanent resident. Okay, now, this is a hot topic. Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle's a U.S. citizen. Is Meghan Markle a royal? No, you don't become a royal by marrying a royal. You become a royal through blood, right? However, even if she was a royal, if she became a royal, she would not lose her U.S. citizenship. On the naturalization form, it asks you if you have any royalty and are you willing to give it up. Because when you naturalize, as part of the oath or statement, you have to give up your foreign royalties if you have them. Of course, we don't have royalty in the United States yet. But you have to give up your foreign royalties. However, just like with dual citizenship, it's up to the foreign country to accept or reject that renunciation of your royalty. So let's say somebody were to acquire royalty in a foreign country, you can still maintain your U.S. citizenship. So becoming a royal is not, now, if she becomes a British citizen, does she lose her U.S. citizenship? No, because the United States, in order to lose your citizenship, you have to make a willful and knowing renunciation. You can't renunciate just because you want to be a British citizen. You have to want to give up your U.S. citizen. So she says apparently she's going to be a British citizen, which I expect that will happen. And when she does, she will renounce her U.S. citizenship at the oath. That won't count. She will be a dual citizenship under current law. She will maintain her U.S. citizenship. If she has a child, as they seem to do a lot, these royals, the child would be a royal and a U.S. citizen, okay? I thought you might find that very important. Now, in case some of you are envious, now you know the difference between envy and jealousy. Jealousy, you want what the other person has. Envy means you want the same as the other person has. So we wouldn't want to take anything away from Meghan Markle, but if we're envious of Meghan Markle and you too want to be a prince or princess, it happens that there are some available unmarried prince and princesses. So we have a princess from Thailand. She's the only daughter of Thailand's crown prince. She is single and available. We have Prince Philippos of Greece and Denmark. He also, he likes to live life away from the limelight and shirks away from the royal circle. Well, what's the point of marrying him? Anyways, I just thought you should be aware of that. There's still some opportunities. Okay, naturalization delays. The USCIS says that it's taking 2.5 months to 17 months. You can find that by going online on their website. I don't believe them. I think it's going to take even longer. And they could do something about it. You know, citizenship is supposed to be fee generated. So that means the more people apply, the more people they should hire to do the work. But nobody knows really for sure. But I will tell you, when Ronald Reagan was the president, they did mass naturalizations. I mean, very, very fast. And I think his idea was, you have to memorize who's the president, Ronald Reagan. Who's the president, Ronald Reagan. So then when you go to vote in November, you vote for Ronald Reagan, right? But I don't think this administration has the same view. Now, if there's a delay in your naturalization interview, you have not been heard for a long time, more than 17 months, more than is typical, or you think even 6 months is too long, the only way you can, besides going to see your congressman, which probably won't help unless it's more than 17 months, is what's called the mandamus action. And just so you know, a mandamus action is you go to ask a federal judge to force the Immigration Service to make a decision, not to approve the case, but to make a decision. I'm mandating you to make a decision. It's pretty hard to do without a lawyer. I'm hoping that there'll be some kind of class action. I know people are talking about it, about these citizenship delays, because it is outrageous that people are eligible for citizenship. Used to take 4 months, now it takes 17 months. What's that about? If you want to, okay, the election, somebody said. So people want to vote in 2020, they better start getting going now. And that's what we talked about this morning. That's part of the reason we're putting such an emphasis on citizenship this year. People do want to vote in 2020. Once you have interviewed, there's a different rule takes place. Once you have interviewed, the Immigration Service has 120 days to adjudicate your application. That is to grant you citizenship or not grant you citizenship. So the first delay is being interviewed. The second delay is going from the interview into the swearing in ceremony. They have 120 days. If they do not decide in 20 days, you have a right to ask a federal judge to actually decide the case. That's their right, because in mandamus we learned that that's when you're ordering the government to decide the case. In the 120-day rule, the judge actually can adjudicate and make you a citizen, okay? So that's different. But again, very hard to do without a lawyer, but if you're tenacious, you can learn to do it. Go online, get some forms. Usually the federal clerks are very smart, and usually they will help you. We do not provide that service yet at Citizenship now, maybe someday. Okay, by the way, if any of you know any of those top 10 billionaires, feel free to tell them this is a project we'd like to take on. Okay, now, there's still a couple more unmarried royals I want to introduce you. Princess Eugenie of York, sister of Princess Beatrice. She is on the market. If she gets married, you can too marry a royal. I think we have one more here. Yes, Prince Hamdan bin Mohammed of Dubai, he is on the market. So we have four eligible princes and princesses. And those of you are, you know, I don't know if you saw the Meghan Markle, she went to, I don't know how it happened, but, you know, she met the guy and, you know, it all worked out. It could happen to you. Right. I sound like a Walt Disney movie, right? All right. Now, finally, loss of citizenship. So people are really nervous. At the bottom, I mentioned Operation Janice, right? Operation Janice, they're looking, what happened was there were a number of people who got naturalized before there was an agency check to see if they had a criminal record. So they're going over all these applications to see whether the person had a criminal record. The thing is that it's very, very hard to lose your citizenship. I mentioned that if you take citizenship in another country, and even if you say, I hereby renounce my U.S. citizenship, you are still a citizen. You have to go to a consulate, you have to fill out these forms. It's a very, and even then, people have gone to the consulate, oh, I didn't really understand, I didn't know what I was doing, and they give your citizenship back. However, you can lose your, and secondly, you could not lose your citizenship for acts that you engaged in after you became a citizen other than the formal renunciation. So let's say you become a citizen and you blow up a building, heaven forbid. They're not going to be able to take your citizenship away, put you in jail, you can be, get the death penalty, but they can't take your citizenship away. However, let's say you commit a crime after becoming a citizen, like drug dealing, and they're investigating you, right? They're checking you out. They're talking to your people. Somebody says, this guy's been dealing drugs for 10 years. Really? He didn't put that down on his citizenship application, because on the citizenship application it asks you, is there any crime for which you have not been arrested or charged? Well, this guy was a drug dealer. This has happened. The guy was a drug dealer, and he didn't put it down. They're going to denaturalize you. And that's how they got a lot of the people who were charged with organized crime in the 30s and 40s. They went after them on the grounds that they had committed crimes before becoming citizens, and they denaturalized them. So, if you commit a fraud, for instance, like these Nazis, they didn't get them for being Nazis. They got them for lying when they came into the United States. They said they committed a fraud. They took their citizenship away. Then they deported them. So you can't deport a citizen, right? But you can take their citizenship away. It's very rare and it's very, very difficult. So when people hear about it, it's happening more now than it's happened, let's say, in the last 20 years. They are going after people, but still they have to have the goods on you. It can't just be something little, These are people who have committed serious crimes, and for whatever reason, they didn't put it down on their form. It did not come to the Immigration Service attention. They denaturalized them for not being eligible to naturalize in the first place, right? So it's very, very difficult. So I don't want we want to make sure people are not panicking about these kinds of things. Even if you lied about some things, if it's not too serious, it's going to be very, very hard. What happens sometimes, let's say somebody does something else really bad, and they look at their history, and they look at their and they find out they lied when they got their green card. Well, if the person had stayed out of trouble in the first, after they got their citizenship, they would have never found out about it. So, as an advice to any of you who became permanent resident U.S. citizens, if you're going to do something, once you get your citizenship, try, keep it real low, All right? Okay. So I think that's it. I'm done. Like I said, I'm going to be around. See you later. Thank you all for coming.
That was our fearless leader, Alan Wernick, everyone. So now that we've heard the basics of what the law is, we're going to go into completing the N-400 form. How do these things show up on the form itself? What we've been talking about all morning. I'm introducing you to Sean Rahman, who was an award-winning Citizenship Now volunteer at our events. Before he joined us as a staff attorney in 2016, he was neck and neck for a perfect attendance award, and we ruined it by actually bringing him on staff. Sorry about that, Sean. He has recently been doing screening and application assistance training for the volunteer corps, so many of you are familiar with him, and he prides himself on not missing any Citizenship Now events in almost 3 years. So here he is, Sean Rahman.
Thanks, Alan, for waking everybody up. All right. By show of paddle, the thumb paddle, do we have anybody in the room that has never filled out an N-400? Paddle? Okay. All right. Here's a challenge for you folks, and it's a good one. If you remember only half of what you learned today in this session, we will have a great event. Okay? So no worries. Let's go. All right. There's an annotated version of the N-400 in your packet. It might be helpful for you to follow along with that. You will see that the first page is not really part of the N-400 application. It is what's called the e-notification request, the 1145. That is going to be attached to every single one of our N-400s at the event. Very quick to fill this out. It just gives the participant an additional form of notification electronically, either by text or email, they will still receive the written card in the mail, or the written acceptance in the mail, about 10 days after they receive the text message or the email. But it's something, just an added form of notification, okay? All right. Some reminders quickly. We didn't write it here. Please go slow, okay? Some of our volunteers comparing with each other how many applications they completed, and it makes us cringe. There's no reason to want to do more than you absolutely can at a very, very slow pace. We need everybody to use black ballpoint pens. We will provide the pens for you, okay? Print legibly. Can I get everybody here to commit to writing in capital letters? We find that everyone's handwriting is better when you write in all caps, okay? Just remember, everyone that reads this application has to be able to everybody who sees this application has to be able to read it, okay? Thank you. There are riders for extra pages, for extra space. We'll take a look at the riders in a minute. Understand the difference between not applicable and when the question is asking for a number. So there's a question there about how many children the participant has. That's if they don't have a child, the answer is 0 and not an A, okay? There are at least 57 dates that you'll have to enter on this application, and all the dates need to be in this format. 2 digits for the month, 2 digits for the year, and 4 digits, 2 digits for the month, 2 digits to the day, and 4 digits to the year, okay? Some foreign documents will have the month and day transposed. Everybody's familiar with this? Okay. The A number goes on top of every page, okay? It's a good practice. If you've been at our events, you'll know this. It's a good practice to put that A number on top of every page when you start. There are 2 pages at the end of the application that will not be completed at the event, and we need to put the A numbers on those pages too, okay? All right. No stray marks. If you make mistakes, we will have whiteout, but excessive whiteout is not encouraged. By all means, feel free to redo that page. We will have extra pages for you if there's too much whiteout on one page. Okay, let's get going. All right, so we have riders for almost every instance, and then we have a generic rider. Okay, most of the riders are because the application simply does not have enough space. For instance, there's room for 4 children, and you might have a participant that has 8 or 9 kids. It happens all the time. There are 2 riders that provide more of an explanation, and that's one for taxes and for selective service, and we'll demonstrate one of them in a little bit later, okay? Again, A number on top of every page. Some of the older green cards have only 7 or 8 numbers. So if somebody's A number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we have to add 2 digits to the front, and that's going to be 2 zeros. So we will write 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is everybody clear on this? All right, let's go on. All right. There are 4 bits of information that are relevant to the application on the green card. The first name, which is the given name, the surname, A number. Lately, the term A number has given way to being called a USCIS number. They're one and the same. And of course, the date the participant became a green card holder or resident, okay? The older green cards may have the dates on the back. If you have any questions about reading this, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find. Please raise your paddle and ask a supervisor. If you are presented with somebody who doesn't have a green card but has this I-551 stamp, well, the I-551 is the name of the green card, okay? That's the form name of the green card itself. This stamp is valid proof of their LPR status, okay? And we can proceed without the green card for those who have the stamp. It will have the date they became the green card on this stamp, okay? All right. Eligibility at the events. Everyone, of course, will be a green card holder by virtue of, and they will be eligible by virtue of being a green card holder for 5 years, 1A, or 3 years from being married to a U.S. citizen, okay? It means they've gotten their green card by way of being married to a U.S. citizen, and they are eligible now based on their 3 years of marriage and living together with the U.S. citizen, okay? And of course, they have to be at least 18 years of age. All right? We've gone over this before, I think, in the earlier presentations, the 5-year rule and the 3-year rule. Of course, each participant can file 90 days ahead of time at 4 years and 9 months or 2 years and 9 months, okay? Information about you. Most people know what their legal name is. If there's a question about what it could be, check the birth certificate, the first place you check. The legal name is on the birth certificate, and there's only a couple of other times when people tend to change their legal name. One is at marriage, and the other is by court order, and that's it. All right, so it could be changed through marriage, divorce, or court order. Check passports, check inconsistencies in their identifying documents to see if perhaps a name had changed somewhere along the way. Okay? Question number 3, I'm sorry. Question number 2, your name exactly as it appears on the permanent resident card. Sometimes the green card has the wrong name on it, and we have to write the wrong name on this application. More often than that, though, you may find the middle name is just abbreviated or just one letter. Exactly as it's written on the green card goes in number 2. Number 3 is a space for nicknames, for aliases, other names that they might be using on their identifying documents, that goes here. If there are none, write NA. All right. Some people are surprised to find out that they can actually change their name during the naturalization process. Now, you will ask your participant, do you wish to change your name? Most people say no. Some people are amazed that they can do it. And some people actually try to figure out a new name right then and there. Okay? Try to encourage them to maybe spend a little bit more time thinking about it. Okay? Tell them to go home, go home, think about it, So, all right? And the names can be anything that they want. New York has just one restriction that I know of, and that's you can't have a number on a name. But generally anything that they want. Okay? All right. 5, most people have a social security number. Oh, this is a good tip. If you find your participant is hesitating about their social security number or they don't know it by heart, encourage them to please take it out and fill it out from the card itself. Okay, everybody got that? Okay. So let's do our first case study. This is a tricky one, and these are getting harder, okay? What is Erica's legal name? So you're assisting Erica, who's from Uganda. Her driver's license, green card, social security card, passport, all list her name as Erica Boza. However, her birth certificate from Uganda says, which was issued 10 years after she was born, lists her as Erica Bozo. Erica doesn't like that, right? She tells you she's never used Bozo, and that it was a mistake. She says she never had a problem getting all her official documents to list her name as Boza instead of Bozo. Our question is, what is her legal name? Remember, this is just a training. No betting on this, please? Okay. Is her name Erica Boza, as listed on her driver's license, green card, social security card, and because Bozo is a mistake, or is it Erica Bozo? Because unless she changed her name after birth certificate was issued, it's likely Bozo. Raise your hands. Okay. Okay, you have about 10 people who say that it's Boza. The answer is no, I'm sorry. It is Bozo. Because remember what we said, that the legal name is probably what's on her birth certificate, unless she had it changed. Okay, so luckily for her, she can change it at, naturalization, okay? All right. 7, identifying information for background checks, very important. USCIS and the FBI will receive this information. Gender, male and female, in this day and age of where identity and sex are starting to diverge. You may run into a kind of an issue here. If it's not obvious, as it happened to me about 2 years ago, if the sex of a participant is not obvious by looking at them, you might want to not ask that uncomfortable question and maybe check their driver's license, okay? I'm sorry? Or ask them, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, or ask them. That's fine. Right, remember the date of birth in this format, okay? They became an LPR. Country of birth, this is interesting. Country of birth, that country may not exist. For instance, it could be Yugoslavia when they were born, and Croatia now. It could be Zaire when they're born, Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo now. So 10 is the country of birth, even if the country does not exist, okay? 11 is the country of nationality or citizenship. Try not to put Dominican, British, try to put the actual country name there, okay? All right. If someone is stateless, it's going to be rare. It happens. Raise your paddle if they claim they don't have a state, okay? They're without country, okay. Question 12 has to do with an exemption from the English language and civics requirement, the civics requirement. This is a medical exemption required. They need to have a doctor, a licensed medical doctor fill this out, and the burden is very, very high to have this done, okay? If somebody tells you, if a participant tells you they want to pursue a medical medical exception to this exam, please raise your paddle and we will set them up with a follow-up appointment, okay? All right. We went over the exemptions from the exam. I'm gonna go right through this. This, again, part 3 is the medical disability exemption. This requires, again, that form N648 to be completed by a medical doctor, okay? All right, that's different from the accommodations in part 3. The accommodations are for somebody, for instance, saying they have a disability or impairment. So for instance, 1A asks, I am deaf or hard of hearing, and we will write in, please speak louder, or please administer, please administer the exams in sign language, right? I am blind or have low vision, please administer the exams orally. Or, we show this example at our trainings usually, somebody might have a stutter, and we will write, I have a stutter, please be patient while I try to get the answer out. So this is, again, accommodations for disabilities, impairments. It could also be a wheelchair, things like that. They also, USCIS will on occasion actually examine people in their homes if they are unable to, if they are not mobile. Okay, so this is where we would write something like that. Any questions? Okay, great. The residence section, there are places for 3 residences, current physical address, of course, and mailing address in case they do not receive their mail at where they live. If the mailing address is the same, just write same as above. If the residence is secret or private because somebody has, a order of protection out on them, or just raise your paddle. We will take care of that. Okay. Okay to leave zip code +4 blank. This is pretty easy. County and country. We have counties in the United States, and this sometimes mixes people up. So just be aware. There's one box for county and a different box for country. Okay. If somebody provides you a foreign address and you can't figure out you're having a hard time figuring out where that address fits as far as the province or region name, the postal code country, just simply raise your paddle and we will assist you through that. So let's go through the quiz because counties can be a little bit tough. Let's just call them out. These are the counties of New York. What's red? Bronx, right? Remember, we're looking for the county name. What's blue? New York County, not Manhattan, it's New York. Okay? Orange. Queens, yes. Yellow. Kings, that's right. And purple, not a foreign country. What is it? What is it? Richmond, not Staten Island. Anybody here from Staten Island? Yes. All right. So Manhattan is, again, New York for the city and located in New York County. Brooklyn is Kings County for reasons nobody knows. Queens is written, well, we don't write Queens, do we? I'm from Queens. Anybody else from Queens? We don't write Queens, New York. We write our neighborhoods because we need to be different, right? We need to, all right. So it would be Flushing, New York, or Whitestone, New York, or Woodside, New York, so just be aware of that. And here's the thing, if you write Queens, New York, the mail still gets to you. So figure that out, okay. Bronx is Bronx County, and Staten Island is Richmond, all right. Part 6. Part 6 is information about your parents. Strange thing about Part 6 is, the first question is, were your parents married before the 18th birthday? But unfortunately, if you just went right into that question, you missed the whole point of the section. Let's look at the instructions, and always read the instructions, folks, okay? If neither one of your parents is a US citizen, then skip this part and go to Part 7. I promise you at least 50 of you will miss this, because it always happens. And if it happens, it's fine. But the first question here should have been, were either one of your parents a US citizen, right? So that's the first question you need to ask, not question number 1. Because if they weren't US citizens, we're gonna skip this section entirely. Everybody got that? Yes, all right. We're gonna have perfect applications this time. This is great. Information about your mom and dad, if either one of them became a citizen, all right? The A number can be found on the citizenship certificate. Okay, usually, you no longer have your green card when you get your citizenship paper, but the A number is on that certificate, okay? Let's move on. Biographic information, a couple of practice pointers here. Everybody is Hispanic or Latino or not Hispanic or Latino, right? It's an old holdover from the old census, doesn't quite make sense, but that's what it is. Okay, number 2, race. It says select all applicable boxes. Well, there's some missing here, aren't there? All right, you'll find a lot of people will just be puzzled about what race. White, Asian, Black, or African American. Where do you put somebody who's from, let's say, I don't know, Brazil here? Well, that might be a little bit, okay, DR, Dominican Republic, where do you put them? Not always all-inclusive here. Remember, it says all applicable boxes. If your participant does not want to fill one of these out, that's fine. Some people protest and write other, so no big deal. 3, height and weight. Hopefully most people know their height and weight. They may know it in metric, okay? So you might have to do a little conversion while you're sitting there in front of them, okay? Everybody have a smartphone? Okay, now somebody here has a flip phone, come on. No? All right, so if they don't know their weight in pounds, ask them what it is and we'll do the conversion on the phone, okay? We have people who don't know how tall they are. It's usually on their driver's licenses, so I've asked participants to stand up, just measure them against myself, whatever you can, just make sure, that's a little bit more difficult on weight, okay? Don't do that with somebody's weight, okay? It's a little bit more sensitive, all right? Eye color and hair color seems pretty easy. I find that some people are fiercely loyal to calling themselves with black eyes and black hair, even though they have brown hair. No, it's black. Okay, we'll do black. No problem. It's your application. We'll do black. All right? All right, let's go on. All right. The thing about the employment and schools attended, if you remember nothing else, all the dates have to fill in. Okay? There are places for 3 schools and employers. And if you're lucky, that's all there will be, okay? But many of you will encounter participants that have had 4, 5, 6 jobs, 2 schools. But every school, every job in the last 5 years or 3 years, does everybody understand that? 5 and 3 years? For those that have their green card eligible for citizenship under the 3-year rule, we're only gonna capture 3 years of employment and 3 years of schooling. Even though the application says 5, we're gonna do that for 3 and 5, okay? Now, so here's a tip. If somebody has a period of unemployment in between 2 jobs, that's 3 entries. Does everybody get it? We have to account for that period of unemployment. So if they had 1 job and then a 5-month period of unemployment and then another job, their current job, There's 3 entries here. All right? So we need to account for periods of unemployment. Make sure there are no gaps between dates. After you're done, those dates should match up nicely, one right after the other. All right? Include military service. Somebody's retired or unemployed or stay-at-home mom, by all means, write that as occupation. Okay? Any questions on this? I know we're going real fast. Could you write your questions down and we'll address them at the end? Great. All right? All right. Don't try to miss anything here. Okay. Good practice point on unemployment. You will have people ask, okay, where did you work? They tend to know where they're working now. Where did you work before that? I had one participant recently said, oh, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts in Manhattan. I'm like, oh, great. As if that's the only one, right? So we got to find this address, right? And please, let's do everything we can at the event to complete this application. The less we send the participants home with to complete, the better. So she did not know what the address was. I said, okay, you know what? Let's try this then. How did you get to work? Oh, I took the train. What stop did you get on? What stop did you get off? Oh, Rector Street. Oh, you work downtown. Yes, downtown. Okay, so now I know she got off at Rector Street. I was like, how did you walk very far from the train? She's like, no, it was right outside the train station. You look it up, and lo and behold, there is a Dunkin' Donuts on Rector Street, and your phone, and that suddenly you have the address. So do whatever you can to coax it out of them. Okay? All right. I know, it sounds crazy, right? But, okay. We already talked a lot about time outside the United States, continuous residence, abandoned physical presence. If you're still wondering where the 912 days came from, that's 5 years divided by 2. Do the math, 365 times 5 is 1,825. Divided by 2 is 912. Everybody got that? 912 is half the 5 years, and 547 is half the 3 years. Okay? So, moving on. What time are we going till? We're good? Okay, great. Raise your hand if Part 9 is your favorite section on the application. I tell you this, after years and years and years of doing these, it never gets easier, okay? Because it's all, specific to that particular participant. If you're lucky, you'll have somebody who's 20 years old, who's never been on a trip in their life, never married, never worked. Do those applications in 30 minutes. But we recently had the all-time king of this section, a queen of this section. It was a woman who went to DR. Is Anthony here? Anthony, where are you? Yes, Anthony. It was his application. A woman who went to DR, and during her long trips to DR, she went back and forth to Haiti several times in between. And there were about 40 or 50 stamps. And it ended up being 3 trips. But we had to go through all of them. You know what? And I'm going to come back to this section in a minute. And of course, passport stamps never read clearly. They're missing. They never put them on the next page, right? Why do they do that? Why do they do that? Yeah, I once opened up the page where I wanted the guy to stamp it. And what did he do? He flipped it. He knew, it's just awful. It's just awful. Some stamps are so small you can't read them, especially if you're old like me. I literally take out a magnifying glass, do whatever you can to get through this section, okay? So just if you don't have any experience yet on reading passport stamps, it's an education and it's fun, but please, you do not have to go through it alone, okay? All right, let's get back to trips. The irony about Part 9 is to answer question 1 and 2, we have to answer question 3 first. There's room for 6 trips here, okay? Strongly encourage you that if your participant has more than 2 or 3 trips, please write them down on the pad of paper before you transpose them onto this application. You will get through 4 or 5 trips and all of a sudden find one that goes in the middle of these, because these trips have to be in order and they have to be in reverse chronological order starting with the most recent trip, going back to the 5 years or the 3 years. Everybody understand that? All right, all right. Again, 912 days, 547 days. Let's just go through a quick review of how we count dates. The question is, how many total days, 24 hours or longer, did you spend outside the United States? Now, in practice, this means we don't count partial days. So a trip that starts on Sunday and ends on Saturday of that week is 5 days. Does everybody get that? Because we count the days in between, okay? That's for every single trip. We do not include the first day and the day they leave the US and the day they come back. This is vitally important when the participant is getting close to 912 days or 547 days. Another practice pointer, if somebody is close to 912 and 547, we need to review that, all those numbers again very closely. Please do not hesitate to call a supervisor. I'll even submit to you that if your participant has more than 7 or 8 trips, and by all means call a supervisor to help you with that, just to get it done quicker. Somebody could be reviewing the trips while you are completing the rest of the application, okay? All right. Again, list all trips in reverse order. We wanted to show you a demonstration of a great website called timeanddate.com that helps you figure out the longer trips. But trips within the same month is very easy. You just subtract the day they came back from the day they left and subtract 1 after that. So, again, this only works on the same month. A trip from April 2nd to April 29th, 29 minus 2 is 27, minus 1 is 26. 26 days. Again, for the same month, subtract the date they came back from the date they left, hit the answer and subtract 1, and that's your answer. All right? As far as length of trip. Is that really confusing? Yes? Is that good? Yes. Is that useful? Yes. That's the first time I mentioned that, so. All right. Why the 1? Because let's do it. Let's do it. Monday to Saturday. Let's do June 1st to June 10th, right? How many days in between? 8. If you do 10 minus 1 is 9, and we need to get to 8. So for the days in between, we don't count the day. If you didn't minus 1, you would count an extra day. If they're not close to getting to 912, that's not a big deal, okay? But just for good practice, all right? All right, so let's talk about, again, looking at passports, US does not stamp coming in. Sometimes stamps might be missing or, again, hard to read. So let's, your role is to go through the stamps, try to figure out which are the entry stamps, which are the departing stamps, and take it from there. One last thing I want to mention here. Remember, we're only talking about the dates they left the US and the date they came back to the US on that trip. So if they are doing a worldwide tour, it's one trip, it might be 10 countries, right? But only 2 dates. We're only going to count those 2 days. All right, let's do a case study. All right, this is tricky. I need everybody to think about this, and it goes hand in hand with what we did earlier today. Should you rely on Maylin's memory to determine time outside the United States? So you're assisting Maylin. She forgot to bring her passports. She tells you that the only trip she's taken in the past 5 years is to Taiwan to visit her parents around Christmas every year. She always leaves on the 23rd, and she's pretty sure she comes back to the US on the first Saturday after New Year's Day each year. Okay? It's a fun question, huh? Should you rely on Maylin's memory to determine her time outside the United States? Yes, it seems reliable. We can use her memory. Or no, as a precaution, we should encourage Maylin to return to our offices with her passports, or at least her travel itineraries, to accurately calculate her time outside the U.S. So raise paddles. Please, some people are not answering because you want, put up both paddles if you want. Come on. All right. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people want to go with Maylin's memory. Everybody else does not. And we like the 9 people who will go with Malin's memory. Okay? Remember what we said yesterday, when we said earlier when Luce was presenting. In that scenario, we could not rely on the memory. But look, let's take a look. This looks pretty reliable. She tells you that's the only trip she's taken. Every year she's gone to the same place on the same date, and she comes back on the same date. Who are we to argue with her? Right? So that brings up a good question. What else can we use besides passports? We can use travel itineraries. Remember, the passport stamps are not going to be there sometimes, right? We can Expedia, other travel websites. Customs and Border Protection has a website for arrival and departure, not always reliable or accurate, okay? We can use the participant's memory so long as it seems like it's reasonable, okay? Now, we have also, the dates don't have to be correct. We can write dates that say Christmas 2018 to Easter 2019. Is that good? Yeah, that could be good. We can write, the exact dates are not known. We can write January 2017. Leave it at that, okay? Sometimes the dates just simply cannot be found, and that's the point. We're gonna try to find them and try to get there, but we're not gonna spend an hour doing it, okay? Everybody got it? Again, please ask for help. This can be very tedious, very frustrating, okay? All right. Marital history. Single, never married, married, divorced, widowed, separated, marriage annulled. Does everybody know the difference between legal separation and just being apart? We have so many, anybody not know the difference? Legal separation. Okay, if, let's say you, raise your hand. Okay, so you and your spouse get married and suddenly can't stand each other's guts, you move out and you don't do anything about it. Are you still married? Yes, you're still married. We'll have participants who will say, oh, I'm separated. I'm like, oh, did you get a legal separation? They're like, no. Well, so you're not really separated. You know, your husband just left. You don't know where he is, but you're still married. Happens all the time, okay? Sorry if that's a little too close to home for some people here. Okay. Interesting thing, marriage annulled, for those, any attorneys here? Yes. So you know that in many states, an annulled marriage is as if the marriage never happened. Not so for immigration, okay? If it's an annulled marriage, it happened for immigration purposes, okay? All right. Remember the 3-year rule? If you're currently married to and living with a U.S. citizen spouse, you are eligible to apply after 3 years, okay? Number 2, if you're married and your spouse is a current member of the U.S. Armed Forces, in case you want to know, that is for the husbands and wives of service personnel who might be stationed outside the United States. They get credit for their time, okay? They can also complete their naturalization outside the United States. So that's that, why that question is there. How many times you've been married, including annulled marriages, marriages to other people, and marriages to the same person, okay? Count each time as a separate marriage. If the participant's never been married, just skip this section. If the participant is recently widowed or is a widower, they're no longer currently married, okay? There was a bit of confusion at one of our events recently where we couldn't, you know, this became an issue. Somebody who has a spouse that's deceased is no longer married, okay? In fact, there is a widowed, okay? Section there. We do not complete this section for those individuals, okay? Pretty clear. We need to show if the spouse is a U.S. citizen. If the spouse is a U.S. citizen, we skip question number 7. If the spouse is not a citizen, we write this information down. Pretty simple. If the spouse, just so you know, does not have an immigration status, here in question 7C, we'll simply write the citizen of whatever country. We're not going to write undocumented. We're not going to leave it alone. We're not going to, write anything. We're just going to write citizen of Mexico, Trinidad, whatever, okay? All right, it's pretty simple. So the application flow is something like this. Parts 9 and, I'm sorry, part 9 goes to, if you were married before, provide information about the prior spouse. Now this is about the participant, the applicant, okay? So they're going from the applicant to the applicant's prior spouse. So here is the applicant's prior spouse, and all of their prior spouses. I'm sorry. If you were married before, please provide information about your prior spouse. My eyes are getting so bad, I'm sorry. My prior spouse's legal name, all their information. Some of our participants are surprised to find out that they, even though we tell them that they need it, but they need to bring information for all of their prior spouses. And there'll be times when that information is no longer available, or they're not talking to them anymore. It's been 20, 30 years since they've spoken to them. So we'll get through that in a few minutes. You know, we'll get through that at the event. If never married before, of course, we skip this section. Instruct the participant to make a best effort to contact the prior spouse, because we need to know, you know, the dates of marriage, the dates of divorce, how the marriage is ended, date of birth of current spouse, and sometimes the participant will not have this information, but will still be in touch with their prior spouse. So encourage them to call right in front of you. Remember, we're trying to minimize the amount of information that the participant has to fill in after they leave. Okay? All right, this is a fun one. Let's go again. How many times is Alex married, and is he still married? So Alex married Lisa, and they divorced 2 years later. Let's follow this. Alex then married Daisy, but they got divorced a year later. Alex and Lisa then remarried, but recently entered into a legal separation. Alex is now engaged to Daisy again. All right, all right. Married Lisa, then married Daisy, then married Lisa again, and now is legally separated, engaged to Daisy again. How many times has Alex been married? Alex married 3 times? 3 times. Wow. The others, because you genuinely don't know this answer, or? Where are your pals? Yeah. Just kidding. Okay. Seems to be consensus. Hikma believes differently. Okay. The answer is yes. Alex is married 3 times. Each marriage, including remarrying a prior spouse, counts separately. Pretty easy, huh? Okay. Is Alex currently married? Remember? Yes? No? He and Lisa are legally separated. A little bit tougher. Is he currently married? Yes. Let's see the paddles. Yes, he is currently married. Somebody who's legally separated is still married. Remember, the marriage does not dissolve until they do what? Or? Exactly. Right. So Alex is still married. Okay. Remember we said a married couple that is separated even for a long period of time is still married. Okay. Children. There's room for 4 kids on the application. And after that, we could go to a rider. The first question on kids is a very long one. Include your total number of children. You must include all children, including children who are alive, missing, deceased, children born in the U.S., children 18 years of age. Oh, you get the idea. Okay? If you do not feel like reading this whole question, be careful. I made a very bad mistake myself, not too recently, on this question. I asked, I get into a conversation, you talk to them for a while, and I said, so how many kids do you have? She said, I have 3 kids. I'm like, okay. Write down all the information about the 3 kids. And then we couldn't find one piece of information, so she gave me her paperwork. I'm going through it. And then I see that she had a 12-year-old son who was murdered several years ago. And I'm like, oh, I asked her, how many kids do you have? The better question would have been, how many kids have you had? Okay? All right, so now I got to go and write that information about the child who was murdered in between. You know, I'm going to traumatize this woman about asking about her child, and it was just, you know, just understand that that question can be tricky. Any questions? All right. Minor children not living with them, again, it gives rise to possible child support issues that we discussed before. Adult children not living with them, they may not know their address. If they're still in touch with them and they're here in the United States, have them call, okay? It's okay to write unknown here if it's adult children, okay? If it's young children under 18 and it's unknown, what are we gonna do? Raise the paddle. Because if it's young children and the address is unknown, probably gives rise to child support issues and questions, and we'll have a supervisor come over and we'll discuss that a little bit further, okay? Note whatever's missing. You know, here, we'll try to fill out as much information as possible. This is a good practice pointer. If all the kids are living with them, or whatever kids are living with them, no need to write the address over and over again. So if they have 4 or 5 kids, you don't have to rewrite that address 4 or 5 times. You can simply write, resides with me, or with me when it comes to the address, okay? Perfectly acceptable. Everybody understood that? Okay. All right. So, those of you who have been to our events know that you probably will spend more time with the participant at your station than anywhere else. My guess is about an hour to hour and a half is about average. Sometimes it could take longer, okay? The irony about this application is parts 1 through 11, what we just went over, seems to take the longest time. And you'll get to part 12, the biographic information will, and you'll like start letting out a little sigh of relief, because you know, those who have done this before, that part 12 tends to go quickly. However, part 12, it's about good moral character. And we need to make sure that we are about as precise and as comprehensive as possible on this. So, and I just want to also, a little bit of a warning, we all have a tendency to rush through this section thinking that, oh, we have a tendency to want to answer the question for the participants. I'm going to go to that example in a few minutes, okay? So, part 12, again, to be naturalized, you must be a person of good moral character. Now, reminder, that does not mean excellent moral character or perfect moral character. It just means good. Otherwise, many of us would not be here, right? Yours included. So part 12 is designed to help USCIS determine whether the participant meets these criteria. Answer these questions carefully. If any of the questions in this section is marked with a yes, we have to explain them. And you know, if you take the time to tell your participant just that bit of instruction, if you answer yes to any of these questions, we have to provide an explanation. They immediately know that the answer should be no. Okay? Well, we need them to be honest, of course. Okay? Again, the voting issue. Have you ever claimed to be a U.S. citizen? Big no-no. Can't be voting. Have you ever voted in any federal, state, or local election in the United States? This question about the hereditary title sometimes makes people laugh. They tend to ask, well, what is that? Say, have you ever been a prince or princess in another country? All right. So that's I think most people understand what that is. Okay. Again, you have to renounce it before becoming a U.S. citizen, and you have to renounce it in the oath of citizenship. Okay, in the oath of allegiance. Number 5, have you ever been declared mentally incompetent? That doesn't mean that we're not going to naturalize people who have been declared mentally incompetent. It just goes to whether they may or may not understand the oath. Okay, and there are modified oaths, and we can work with them to try to get them to a yes. Okay. We talked about the taxes issue. Owing overdue federal, state, or taxes, not a bar to citizenship, so long as they are working with the IRS to pay off that tax debt, okay? And at the interview, with the USCIS officer, if somebody owes taxes, they're going to want to see maybe the tax transcript or the payment schedule, just some proof that these payments are being made, okay? Again, tax documentation, USCIS lets the participants know that they need to bring either 5 or 3 years worth of tax returns, okay? Question 7, have you ever not filed a federal, state, or local tax return since you became a lawful permanent resident? If you notice, all of these questions have the word ever in it. Have you ever not filed? So this does not only refer to the 5 and 3 year period. This is ever since they became a green card holder. We found the answer to the question from this morning. There is no limit to how far back somebody can go to refile their taxes. The IRS does not place a limit on that, okay? Go back to 1980 if you need to, okay? Again, screeners are going to get through this, and screeners hopefully will provide a tax rider for anybody who was required to file a tax return but didn't for some reason, okay? If the participant answers yes to 7B, which is, do you consider yourself a non-US resident? Very technical term, don't need to go into it right now. If the answer here is yes, please speak to a supervisor, okay? A non-US resident is very, very specific, has very specific tax implications, so we need to make sure we're doing that correctly, okay? Again, 3-year rule, okay? If you are applying for citizenship based on your marriage to a US citizen, those tax returns for those 3 years have to be joint tax returns, okay? And if they're not, well then you have an opportunity as a participant to go back and refile as one of the joint classes, okay? It can be married filed separately, yes. It's got to be one, I'm sorry, it's got to be one of the married filing, joint or married filing separately. Yes, thank you for that. Okay. Question 9, have you ever been a member of any group or associated with any clubs, societies? Now, this is any club. We know that they're getting toward, what they're getting at is subversive organization, pro-communist organizations. Some people, sometimes you'll have participants will say, yes, I belong to my local book club. I belong to my chess club, my knitting club. By all means, put that in. That's not going to get them in trouble, hopefully, unless it's a fierce knitting club or something. I don't know. But, you know, it says any club, go ahead and put that in. All right? All right. Questions, again, 10 through 13, get to 10 through 21 actually in this section. Have a common theme. Have you ever been a member of Communist Party, Totalitarian Party, terrorist organization? Have you ever advocated the throw of any government by force? Most of the answers are always going to be no. But please, again, do not presume that the answer is no. Question 13 is a good example of this. Between 1933 and 1945, have you ever been associated with the Nazi Party? Well, if somebody's only 20 years old in front of you, they weren't born, right? So the answer is going to be no. But please do not answer the question for them. Make sure you ask them the question. Okay? All right. 14. Have you ever been involved in any way with following genocide, torture, killing somebody, badly hurting somebody, forcing or trying to force somebody to have sex with you? Not letting anybody practice their religion. We have a tendency, all practitioners do, I do, to go through this very quickly, assuming sometimes that the answer is going to be no. But we just need to slow down, make sure you hear your participants say no, or you can see them, just some sliver of like acknowledgement from them that they understand the question, okay? We very often run into a little bit of a problem with participants sometimes not understanding the question, and the examiner at the interview will ask them, have you ever been involved with genocide? And they'll be like, what is that, okay? Well, that's proof that they didn't understand the question, and that's a problem, okay? So just go slow. Military unit, police unit, have you ever been involved or ever served in military unit? You know, some countries have compulsory military services, so it's common. Working as a police officer certainly, you know, is possible, okay? I think this gets to, I believe, weapons training and, you know, things like that, okay? Militia, rebel group, guerrilla group. 16, Were you ever a worker or volunteer to work at a prison or jail, prison camp? What's going on here? It's not illegal to work in a prison. The corrections officers. Why is this a big deal? Remember the section. This has nothing to do with being illegal or not. This is about good moral character. And there's tremendous opportunity in foreign prisons to engage in human rights violations and torture. That's what they're getting at. So if a participant has worked ever in a prison or prison camp, this is what these questions are getting to. Okay? Have you ever been part of any group that used a weapon against somebody? Again, recurring theme. Questions 22 to 29 is about their criminal record. If somebody has an arrest or a charge, 29 should already be filled for you by the screener. If you note on the screening notes, or if a participant says they've been arrested and they told the screener and 29 is not filled, we do not want you to fill this section out yourselves. Okay, there's an art form to this. You need to be very careful. By all means, just raise your paddle. A supervisor will come and complete the section out for you. Okay? Everybody understand that? Because it's not as simple as saying jaywalking or disorderly conduct. We really need to be a little bit careful here. Okay? All right. Question 30 is very interesting. It sometimes makes people laugh. Have you ever been a habitual drunkard? Have you ever been a prostitute? We sometimes hear practitioners apologizing for these questions. I'm sorry to ask you these questions. They're a bit invasive. Please do not do this, because you will potentially shame the participant into not answering this. Answer these questions, ask these questions very matter-of-factly, okay? So there's no reason to apologize for them. It's they're applying for citizenship. Of course, if any of these is yes, we need to note it, okay? We've circled, ever been married? Anybody for an immigration benefit? Some of the more problematic ones we've questioned here. We've, highlighted in red. Failed to support your dependents, pay an alimony. All right. All right, this is a good point. If the act occurred prior to the 5-year and 3-year period, probably not a big deal. Not as big a deal as if it happened recently. Okay, that's before the statutory period. Okay, all right. We talked about this practice point of having children under 18 not living with you. Are you paying child support? That's question 30H. Okay, the participant must be prepared to answer questions as to whether they are living up to any kind of child support requirements. Have you ever lied to the government? Have you, certain false statements to the government or on documents can make an applicant removable? Have you ever been removed, excluded, ordered excluded, placed in removal? These questions sound like they may be the same, but they're a little bit different, okay? We need to, if this question is answered yes, we need to stop the day for this participant and have them come to a follow-up appointment where we will start conducting a review of their entire immigration history, okay? We need to know the reasons why this participant was potentially in removal or had a problem with immigration, okay, before we proceed. You ever been in the armed forces? Again, perhaps goes to a couple of things. Military weapons training, whether they were honorably discharged, a very big deal for armed forces members. Okay. Selective service, we talked about the requirement before. At screening, we will try to identify those males who were required to enlist for selective service or sign up for selective service and may not have. The question is, are you a male living in the United States, who lived in the United States between 18 and 26? If you answered yes, they have a requirement. They had a requirement to register for selective service. If they have not done it and they are still within that period where they can, we will do it at the event. Very easy to do. We'll get the number and we will, that will, take care of this section. But if they are between 26 and 31, and they did not register with the Selective Service, they have to explain why, and as we reviewed before, so long as it wasn't knowing and willful, then they should be fine. Then if they are still under 31, within the statutory period, they have to get a certification from Selective Service, okay? All right. Again, how to check Selective Service registration. We will do that at screening usually if the participant doesn't know. It's amazing how many men, boys, men, will forget that they registered for Selective Service, and they're like, they'll be sure that they never have, and yet they have. Okay, so we will do that if they say that they didn't. Okay, all right. Let's go to a case study here. This one's a little bit tricky. Must Eduardo obtain that status information letter from Selective Service and swear that his failing to register was not willful? Eduardo married and obtained his green card through his U.S. citizen spouse in 2014 when he was 25. He didn't register for Selective Service despite living with his spouse since then. Remember, he was 25. Now, 4 years later, he's applying for naturalization and says that he did not know about the Selective Service registration requirement. He did not know. Does he have to get a status information letter from Selective Service and swear that his failing to register for Selective Service was not willful? Should we go over that section again? Okay. Have a lot of yeses, a few no's. Yes, males between 26 to 31 who knowingly and willfully fail to register or simply refuse to register when required may be denied naturalization. Or no, because he is no longer required to show that his failure to register was knowing and willful. The answer is no, he's no longer required. Why is he no longer required? We talked about if you're 26 to 31 and you were required, you have to testify. Why was he different? Huh? Now he's 29. Why is he different? Yes. 3-year rule. Great, somebody was paying attention. He married because his spouse was a U.S. citizen. His statutory period ended in 3 years, okay? So at 29, he no longer has to testify that he knew about the requirement. A little bit tricky there. For most participants, it's going to be 31, but for those under the 3-year rule, it ends at 29, okay? All right, we're almost done here. Questions 45 to 50 ask about willingness to swear allegiance to the United States. These questions take a different tack. These are not here. If the participant answers no, we need to explain it, okay? And the instruction will say if the participant says no to any of these questions, we need to explain it. Do you support the Constitution and form of government of the United States? I want to tell everybody right now that there is no exception to this question. This question must be answered yes. There is no way forward to naturalization with somebody who does not support the form of government in our country or believe in the Constitution, okay? 46, of course. 47, do you understand the full oath of allegiance? Are you willing to take the full oath of allegiance? These can be no, and there could be exceptions to them, okay? They may not understand the oath of allegiance, so there's a modified oath of allegiance in simpler language, okay? Are you willing to take the full oath of allegiance? They may have deeply held beliefs that they don't want to swear to anything, or or they object to some part of the oath. That's fine. We'll help them get through this if it's a deeply held belief, okay? These questions, 48 to 50, actually appear in the oath of allegiance. If the law requires it, are you willing to bear arms, fight for the United States? If the law requires it, are you willing to perform non-combatant services? So the answer to 48 could be yes. I'm sorry, could be no, okay? The answer to 48 could be no. They have a deeply held belief that they will not use arms against anyone. But so long as they answer yes to one of the next two questions, then their application should be fine, okay? Are you willing to perform non-combatant services? Are you willing to perform other work of national importance. Okay? The answer must be yes to at least one of the above questions. All right? Clear? All right. Part 13. Part 13 is actually the signature and attestation section. Remind the participant by signing this document, the information on this application is submitted true and correct to their best of their knowledge. Mistakes on this application are willful, willfully deceiving the government can have grave consequences. So in that sense, it could be a very legally powerful document. Okay. Question number 1, the applicant's statement. I can read and understand English. That box has to be answered for everyone who does not get the language exemption. Okay. All right. If the only persons who can use an interpreter on this application are those who are qualified to under one of the language exemption qualifications. Does everybody understand that? We are not going to interpret, or we should not interpret for people who are required to take the test in English and to understand the application in English. Okay? All right. This section will, question 2, the preparer will already be pre-filled. You'll see part 14. A lot of this is already pre-filled. Okay? This is the interpreter's contact information. If somebody requests an interpretation of this application, raise your paddle if you're unsure whether you can proceed with interpreting if you speak the participant's language, okay? No, as a matter of fact, let's correct that for a second, I'm sorry. Raise your paddle if your participant requests interpretation and they are not exempt from the English language requirement, okay? All right. Contact information, prepares information and signature, already pre-filled. It's very common here. Did we leave out the signature page? Yeah, we left out the signature page here. Okay. There is a space, there is a section in part 13 for the participant to actually sign. We didn't put it in the PowerPoint. Okay. Part 15, this date under Alan Wernick's signature is going to be in the preparer's signature section. We need to fill that date in, okay? If you just simply end the application after the participant signs it, then you will have missed that. So just remember, after the participant signs the application, there is one more piece of information you need to put in, and that is the date after Alan Wernick's signature, okay? And that'll be the date of, hopefully the date of the event, okay? Again, any questions, please write them down. Are we a little bit early? That is a 3-hour training that we did in less than an hour. So we ran through a lot of it. Again, there were a few practice pointers there. I truly believe that everybody here can fill out this application even with no experience and get through it and do a decent job. Our support staff is there for you. We love your participation and your dedication. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please write them down. We're going to have a Q&A session after the great Stephanie Delia takes the stage.
We never end early, you guys. This is a new record. Not only does he have perfect attendance, he has perfect timing. Thank you again, Sean. I'm introducing to you guys Stephanie Delia, who's our managing attorney for City Council Services. She coordinates the delivery of our services at over 30 City Council offices across the city. Since 2010, when Haiti was designated with TPS status, Ms. Delia has been a leader in providing legal services to the Haitian community, and she's organized several free TPS application assistance events around the city. She is going to be talking you through some more advanced issues. Don't put away your forms. Here she is, Ms. Delia, or Mrs. Cole.
Hi, everyone. Hi, can everybody hear me clearly? Perfect. I love is there anyone who does not hear me? Perfect. All right, so I'm going to jump right in. First, we're going to talk a little bit about fee waivers, eligibility and requests. We're going to highlight a few red flag issues, and then we're going to review some event scenarios, some things you should expect to see while you're at the event that may not have been mentioned before. And then we're going to do an overall review of the information you guys already received this morning. So we're going to start a little bit with fee waiver eligibility. Just to highlight, you guys are really going to be dealing with the fee waivers. We just wanted to make sure that we discussed it with you so that you can have an idea, but by the time they come see you, they would have already been pre-screened, and the fee waiver application would have already been completed, okay? So what exactly is a fee waiver? A fee waiver is a form that if you complete it and you meet the eligibility, the fee for the N400 application can be waived. So since the application costs $725, those who are eligible for a fee waiver, who properly completes it, provides the evidence, and submits it, can actually pay $0. So it's extremely important. The vast majority of the people we see are going to be eligible for at least a fee waiver or maybe a fee reduction. And we want to make sure that anyone who's eligible gets that fee waived rather than having to pay the fees. The form that we use to complete is called an I-912 form. Just a side note, the I-912 form for the fee waiver could be used for more than just the N400 application. You guys are only going to be assisting people with the N400, but out there in the regular world, just if you come across any other applications, specifically the I-90, which is the green card renewal form, you could also use that, amongst other things. In addition to a fee waiver, absolutely. It's perfectly okay. Thank you for letting me know earlier rather than later. Is this better? All right, so in addition to a complete fee waiver, there's something called a fee reduction, which is an I-942 that is also available. The I-942, however, is only available for the N400 naturalization application. So you cannot use the I-942 for anything else. You can use the I-912 for several types of applications. There are 3 different criteria under which a person can become eligible for a fee waiver. One is which is actually the most common, is the one where if a person receives a means-tested public benefit, they'll be eligible for a fee waiver. An applicant is eligible for under this category if the applicant, the spouse, or the head of household, who is also living with the applicant, is receiving a means-tested benefit. We assist with this type of application in the event itself. So if a person receives a means-tested benefit, they will be eligible for the fee waiver. They do not have to pay for the citizenship, aka naturalization application. And we actually help them with the whole process in the site, right? In addition to the means-tested benefit criteria, there's another criteria, which is income. If your income is below 150% of the poverty guideline, you're also going to be eligible for 100% fee waiver. Those applications, however, we often will do at our sites. I'm sure someone has mentioned we have about 6 full-time sites. In addition, we have 34 city council member sites. And so we refer the people out to one of our other sites to get assistance with the 150% fee waiver application. Part of the reason we refer those out is because it requires so much evidence. You're going to have to, well, the participant would have to provide evidence of their income, as well as evidence of everyone they live with and their income, because they look at the income of the whole household. That can be a lot of paperwork, and it often takes a little bit of time, and very often the people don't have all the information necessary. So that's why we don't do those at the event. All righty? The last category is financial hardship. Financial hardship is just a little bit more vague. There's not a specific criteria for financial hardship, but generally we say if there's anything that, if there's any other fees that you have to pay, often through no fault on your own, that is really exorbitant, you can usually include that. So one of the examples would be if you had a surgery and your insurance didn't cover it, so you're paying out of pocket really high expenses for your medical expenses, you could usually include that, and that might qualify as financial hardship. Alternatively, if you're paying tuition out of pocket, and the fees for those are extremely high, that usually qualifies. Not every single fee is going to be included, so you might want to call an attorney to find out. But generally, medical fees are the most common. So let's just talk a little bit more about specifically what a means-tested benefit is. It's a public benefit where eligibility for the benefit, which is the amount of the benefit or both, are determined by your income and your resources. So as long as sufficient proof is submitted, no further information will be required to show eligibility. We're going to talk a little bit more about what the sufficient proof is. Examples of means tested benefits include the following. Public assistance is going to be considered PA. That's what it's going to look like in your forms. Anybody who's in public assistance is going to qualify to have the application completed for free. Cash assistance, which is going to say CA, also qualifies. FEPS, which is eviction prevention. HEAP, which is heating assistance. Food stamps, which is SNAP. Medicaid or Essential Plan 1 and 2 both qualify. Notice we didn't mention Essential Plan 3 because Essential Plan 3 is not included, but Plans 1 and 2 do qualify as means tested benefits. The agency that provides the letter is the New York State of Health for public assistance or New York City Human Resources Administration. So it's going to be one of those agencies that's going to provide the letter, and it often depends on how the person applied for the benefit itself. In addition to all of those, Social Security supplemental income is also included as a means tested benefit, not just Social Security benefits, but the supplemental income only. That letter is going to come from Social Security Administration. And in addition to that, public housing and Section 8 are also included, and you get those letters from the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, which is NYHPD, NYC Housing Authority, or New York State Housing and Community Renewal. Just as a note, the official award letter from the agency may be called something other than, it may have a different title. So sometimes they're referred to as verification letter, recertification letter, approval letter, etc. All of those titles, if it gives you the letter, and you're going to see an example of what the letter looks like later, is perfectly fine. So these are a list of the things that are not means tested benefits. Social Security disability, SSDI, which is for people who's been injured, but it's not going to be the same as SSI. Social Security itself, I've already mentioned. Unemployment insurance is not included in means tested benefit. Student loans aren't considered means tested benefits. Workers' compensation, scholarships, pensions, etc. The whole list is here. Anything that was not on our list generally is not going to be considered a means tested benefit. So just keep that in mind moving forward. So the form I-912, here's a copy of what it looks like, what basically the person is going to be submitting. Keep in mind, this particular form is one that we use in all of our events. If you go on uscis.gov website, you won't find that form anymore, but they are still accepting it, so we're going to continue to use it until further notice. The new form, I think, is 10, maybe 11 pages. It's way longer than this one. This is 4 pages. It's a lot quicker, and it's a lot more efficient. So documentation must be attached to support the inability to pay. I.e., if you're applying based on the means tested benefit category, you have to actually have the letter that shows that you're receiving a means tested benefit that gets attached to this. If you're applying based on the income, you need proof that your income is below the amount. I have seen people submit the N-400 with this form completely blank, and they just write a statement. Those are going to get what's called RFE'd. You're going to get a request for additional evidence. Everything will come back to you. So, well, not you, but the participant, which is probably going to make them panic. So just make sure that, well, you won't really be dealing with this, but generally we want to make sure that they know that if they need to attach any additional information, that they have to do so in order for this to be reviewed. At our CN sites, Citizenship Now sites and events, we complete the actual forms at the screening station. I mentioned at the very beginning of this that you guys aren't really going to see this because by the time the participant comes to you, we've already done all of this. But again, if during your conversations, I think Sean mentioned earlier, you spend the most time with these participants. And so it is absolutely possible that you're going to discover information that the attorney who screened them did not find out, or maybe they weren't paying attention and they didn't answer carefully. So if by the time they get to you, you realize they're eligible and yet it hasn't been done, raise your flag, let us know so that we can make sure that these applications get done for free. The fee waiver application and the supporting evidence must be filed at the exact same time as the N-400 application. The package goes together. In essence, you submit the fee waiver form instead of the fee. You cannot send it before or after. So, practice points, supporting documentation. I mentioned a little bit earlier that there's a letter that you're going to get and it goes by a few names. This is an example of what the letter looks like. There are a few requirements that must be met. So the letter doesn't have to look identical to this. It comes in a few different forms. This is the one that we use the most that we use the most often. But the requirements must exist no matter what the letter looks like. So the participant's name must be on the letter. Check to make sure that the name written on the proof of Medicaid letter is also the same name that's either on the green card, well, not either, that is on the green card. If the person's name on the green card is different from this letter, you want to make sure that it's for a legitimate reason. So if they got married and they have a marriage certificate, that's fine. But if they just have a completely different name and that name is not on record anywhere else, not even on the previous names used, you might have a problem. The name of the benefit being awarded must be identified. So as you could see from the first section, the first one is Medicaid. Medicaid is the required benefit here, but Family Health Plus may or may not be eligible because sometimes they pay for it and sometimes they don't. So if any of these other ones are checked off, if none of these are checked off, you already have a problem. But if Medicaid is not checked off, you want to ensure that, let's say they check off other and just put some name you don't know, you want to make sure that that is actually a means-tested benefit, right? The name of the agency administering the benefit has to be listed here. On the top right-hand corner, you're going to see NYC in bold letters. That is the name of the agency, and that's usually where it is, and it's NYC Human Resources Administration. That's pretty standard on almost all the forms. The amount of the benefit being awarded, so here that doesn't apply because it's just the Medicaid, but if they were receiving cash assistance, we'd have to see the exact dollar amount. And the most recent date of the participant was approved for the received benefit. That's extremely important because we want to make sure that the person is currently receiving the means-tested benefit. Every so often, you're going to meet a person who's going to tell you yes, they get Medicaid, and you're going to realize that they didn't recertify on time, and at the time that you're having a conversation with them, they didn't actually get it. It's still not active. That's going to be a problem. So it's important that it's actually current means-tested benefit. That is the most common thing that we see. If it is no longer current, you want to tell them to recertify ASAP and hold off the application until they get proof of recertification. And that is because, again, there's $725 in the line. So you want to make sure they get that. This here says that the letter must be within 6 months of full eligibility period. Currently, they're accepting them up to a year. That recently changed. So, excuse me? Medicaid or one of the other means-tested benefits. So for instance, the example that we see that is usually an issue is they'll check other and either not put what the other is, or they'll put something other than, New York State of Health or Essential Plan. They'll just put something else. That will be a problem because the only way this letter is helpful is if it proves that you're actually receiving a means-tested benefit. So the means-tested benefit that you're receiving has to be clearly, clear when you read the letter. But yes, the other thing is that if it's within a year, it's okay. We generally encourage them to make sure it's within 6 months just because these applications are taking a little bit longer to process. You don't want it to be expired by the time they get it. So if it's going to expire within, I'd say, the week, you want to tell them renew it anyway. If it's going to expire within a few months, you tell them hurry up and get the application out. So how to request the actual letters. We have a handout that gives specific instructions on how the individuals are going to be able to get the proof of means-tested benefit letter. So basically, you don't have to worry about that. If you find that a person is eligible and they tell you they don't have any evidence or they don't have proof, just give them the form and they'll be able to get a copy of the letter they need. How to request continued. So the first letter, I'm going to go back a little bit. That first letter would be for people who are receiving traditional Medicaid, i.e. they went into an office, or let me take it back, traditional means-tested benefit, because means-tested benefit includes Medicaid, cash assistance, et cetera. So if they went through the office and applied the traditional way by seeing a counselor, they're going to be able to get a letter like this. This example is for people who applied online through the New York State of Health. Some of the people applying had a person assist them with the application process, but it was still done through the New York State of Health. If they get the means-tested benefit through the New York State of Health, they can only get proof of means-tested benefit from the New York State of Health. If they applied for the means-tested benefit through a traditional office, they'll be able to get that letter from the office. So The letters look different and you retrieve them in different ways, but they serve the same purpose. So again, you're probably not going to be seeing these people because by the time they come to you, this has already been done. But if a person does come to you, they are eligible, and at that point you realize they haven't applied, one of the questions we want to ask is, did you apply through going through an office, or did you go on the computer and do it? If you ask that way, you'll find out which way they received it, and you'll be able to tell them how to get the letter. Poverty guidelines. So we spoke about the second eligibility requirements in order to be able to get the fees waived was having your income be 150% of the guideline or less. The very first step we want to do is find out how many people are in your household, because again, the income is determined by the whole household size, not just you. And we want to know what is the household income. So there's going to be a form that's going to give you all of this. You don't have to worry about it. You're just going to basically look to see if the number matches whatever that number is or less. This again gets done at the screening station before they get to you, but God forbid it slips past us. You guys want to double check. Again, in order to be eligible for the fee waiver to pay $0, you have to be 150% or less. If you make between 150% and 200%, then you could apply for what's called a reduced fee. And for that one, you're only paying $405, which is roughly about half of the application fee, a little bit more than half. If eligible, a supervisor will send the participant to a follow-up station, and they're going to get an appointment to follow up. Again, I think I mentioned this earlier. The people who are eligible through the income requirement aren't going to be completed fully at during the event. Participants can proceed with the rest of the N400. So you're going to help them complete with your part, but you're just not going to help them with the fee waiver here. All right? Poverty guidelines. This is an example. Remember how I said you don't have to do the math, you don't have to worry about it. You can't really see it here, but on the day of the event, you guys are going to have a form on your desk. Actually, no, it's going to be at the screening station. But on the day of the event, this is going to be available for everyone who's making the determination. All right? So participants are going to be asked to estimate their annual household income. Again, sometimes they don't actually have proof of the income, or their income has changed and they don't know exactly what it is. So we're going to ask for an approximation. If it's close enough to these numbers, we're going to encourage them to try to apply so we can make sure that if they're eligible, they get the fees waived. And if they're not eligible, then we let them know. They must be able to document the household size, so they can't just say there's 3 other people living in the house, but the taxes don't have the information and there's no record of it, right? The household size is going to be something that they can actually document through some kind of paperwork. And participants are definitely going to be set up to a follow-up appointment if they actually meet this eligibility criteria. Financial hardship is the third one that I mentioned, and it is the final way to be eligible for a fee waiver. Financial hardship must be described on the actual form. Again, there's no standard specific thing that makes you eligible. You look at the facts and circumstances. And again, a good example would be if you have medical bills that are extremely high, that's a good way to meet the eligibility. It can be used to explain special circumstances, even if the household size and income puts the applicant above the federal poverty guidelines, and the supervisor will usually send them to a follow-up appointment as well. Those are not going to be done in the actual event. We're definitely going to be sending them to a full-time center to get assistance with that. Here's a complete list of the requirements, the checklist of the documents that you're going to attach. This is exactly the reason that we do this at our full-time centers, because there's a lot of documents that often have to be attached to show that you meet the eligibility. Naturalization procedure. So we're done with fee waivers. All right, we're going to switch over a little bit. The naturalization procedure. You guys have already gone through this in the morning, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly because I don't want to put you all to sleep. First, you got to meet the eligibility requirements. So step 1, you got a green card, either for 3 or 5 years. 2, you complete and mail your application. Of course, there's a few other requirements. 2, USCIS sends you notice of action, which is basically the notice stating that they received it, and so forth. We're not going to go through every single one. You have these in your notes, but anybody who applies must meet all of those requirements. They complete the form and the fee waiver if they're eligible. After they submit everything and USCIS gets it, they're going to get an appointment to have their fingerprints taken. They're going to be told what day they need to go, and once they do, they will go and have the fingerprints done. Currently, the naturalization application process is taking a very long time. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are aware of that right now. So they're waiting a lot longer than they used to before they actually get the interview. But after the fingerprints, they're going to wait a few months. Eventually, they're going to get an interview. The interview is when they're actually going to take the test. That's when they're going to be tested on their English skills as well as their civics. And that's when they're going to be asked a few questions about the information in their application. After that, they're eventually going to be to take an oath. So, like I stated, the N400 processing time is taking a little bit longer. The time range right now, I think it's 10.5 to 17.5 months. It used to take about 9 total, so this is definitely longer than before. File now in order to naturalize in time to vote for the next president in 2020. So definitely encourage everyone to file for citizenship now. Naturalization, so we're gonna do a couple of case studies for red flag issues. Again, remember the requirements. We've already gone through this a couple of times. So here's a good case study. Did Gene abandon his LPR status because he was outside the United States for more than 6 months at one time? You're helping Gene complete his trip section of his N400. You note that from the passport stamps that his trip to Costa Rica lasted 7 months. Gene tells you that his planned 4-month trip sadly turned into 7 months because he was hit by a motorcycle and was hospitalized. So, 1, yes, Gene abandoned his LPR status because he stayed in Costa Rica for more than 6 months at one time, or no, Gene has a valid reason, and with sufficient evidence, he can prove to USCIS that he did not abandon his LPR status. How many people think, okay? That's a lot of no's. Were there any yeses? Don't be intimidated. If you disagree, you could say it. It's a safe space. We got a yes. We got 2, we got 3, got 4. Thank you for being brave. I'm going to go over to the next question. To the answer. So the answer was, I know I encouraged you. I'm sorry. But it is good to be brave, though. Go ahead, tell us your thoughts. So no, Gene has a valid reason, and with sufficient evidence, which is going to be his hospital records and police reports, he's going to be able to prove that to the USCIS that he did not abandon his residency. Just a little bit of explanation about that. Generally, if you're outside of the US for 6 consecutive months, but less than a year, USCIS presumes that you abandoned your LPR status. Applicants have the burden of providing evidence to overcome the presumption. So that's why Gene wasn't considered to have abandoned his status, because we discussed that he got hit by a motorcycle. He had previously planned for staying only 4 months. That means that generally he has a round-trip ticket that would have shown his prior intent. And then he's probably going to be able, well, not probably, he's definitely going to have to be able to get medical records showing that there was some incident that occurred, and he probably wouldn't have been allowed to fly back before then. So that's why the answer was that. We're going to move on to the next one. Must Alex disclose his solicitation of escorts? And will this prevent him from naturalizing? Alex, who is applying for naturalization, confesses to you that he frequently solicits or engages the personal services of escorts. You ask him if by escorts he means prostitutes, and he says yes. He has never been arrested for this or any other reason. Must Alex disclose this? And will he have a difficult time proving good moral character? Because good moral character. You guys are already answering. I haven't even given you options. So, option number 1, yes, he must answer yes on whether he ever procured anyone for prostitution, and it may prevent him from proving good moral character. No, Alex does not have to disclose this information. So for the yays, who's saying yes, he does have to disclose? That's quite a few. Just yeses and nos for now. Okay, I see quite a few yeses. And how many people say no? So put the yeses come down for now. So there's a minority of no's. Thank you for being brave. That's it? Okay. So no, Alex does not have to disclose this information. First, let me just say this is extremely important. Thank you, Sean. Sean, by the way, created this question for us. Let me just say this is extremely important. If you get this question, you're not making the assessment, you are raising your paddle and getting an attorney. This is extremely tricky. This is very complicated, and I please beg of you, do not make this determination of your own. The reason this answer is a no is because procuring anyone for prostitution has a very specific legal definition, and more importantly, we have enough case law to have shown that one of the reasons that this is a no for Alex is because Alex states that, yes, he does occasionally. And I'll go back to the question. So here he says he does frequently solicit or engages in personal services or escorts, and he does state that they actually do mean prostitutes. Procuring generally means basically, it's not quite trafficking, but it's more engaging in kind of more of a control aspect of it, right? So you get women, you convince them to prostitute, or you engage in it on a regular basis and there's some consistency and you have more of a control. The way this question is phrased, or at least the way you're supposed to interpret this question, is that for Alex, it's more of a casual activity. Again, personally, you can have your own thoughts about this, but just as a general rule for legal purposes, this is the type of question that Alex probably would not have to. And I'm saying the words properly because there are some attorneys that might disagree with this assessment. But yes, generally Alex would not have to, all right? There's gonna be time for questions later. I'm sure we'll get quite a few about this. Oh, no. Well, even if it's legal, prostitution itself, for the purposes of this question, if you have procured prostitutes, you must disclose. We determined that he wasn't procuring prostitutes in the way that this question is written, so that's why we're not disclosing, all right? But whether or not it's legal in your state, you must disclose it. If it's legal in your state, then it'll be assessed differently, all right? There's time for questions later. I know this was a controversial question, so I'm gonna move forward to something less controversial. 1 second. Okay, so we already got past this. So if you guys remember, good moral character. Good does not mean excellent. Obviously, Alex doesn't have excellent moral character. But legally, it definitely meets the standard of good. USCIS will determine this, whether an applicant has met the good moral character requirement on a case-by-case basis. So that's why I kept stressing that if you see this or if you come across this, if somebody discloses this to you, you have to contact an attorney ASAP. The attorney themselves might need a few minutes to make the determination. And quite frankly, at any given moment, two attorneys might disagree on what the answer should be. Some crimes and acts are automatic permanent bars to citizenship. Some are conditional bars. So lucky for Alex, solicitation of escorts for personal use is not one of those. All right, final minute. This is going to be a very fast reading and a fast answer. Last one, all right? What to do and will this prevent Taylor from naturalizing? You're assisting Taylor with her application, and when you get to page 14, she suddenly goes quiet. She confesses to you that she was arrested and convicted of shoplifting when she was 15 years old. Taylor did not mention this at screening. 1, do you tell Taylor she does not have to mention this on her form because she was under 18 when she was convicted and you keep filling out the form? Or 2, do you raise your paddle to speak with the supervisor to discuss this further with Taylor as all charges and arrest are potential risk? All right, you guys are ready. Put it down. Any brave souls that are going to go with yeses? We got 1. Oh, you changed your mind, sorry. 1. Wait, put the no's down. Let me see if we got yeses. No yeses? We got a yes. We got 2. All right, I like brave foes. All righty, sorry. I keep encouraging. All right, so you raise your paddle to speak to a supervisor to discuss this further with Taylor. Just a quick thing, all arrest charges and convictions need to have thorough evaluations. The truth is youthful convictions do not qualify as convictions for the purposes of immigration. That is a very general rule. However, one of the loopholes is that the activities does get considered. And on that note, I'm done.
We are going to tie up everything that we learned today in a bow and explain some of the Citizenship Now isms, the terminology that you guys have been hearing all day, why we refer to certain things a certain way. I'm presenting this duet in conjunction with my lovely colleague, Luis Paulino, who all of you have met so far. Hooray for Luis! He's our new volunteer coordinator. You may know him from our post about him called Have You Met Luis? If you have not met Luis, I suggest you do. He's the bestest. We're going to get started explaining logistics to you guys. People have been coming up and asking us questions about registering for the events, or what does this mean or what does that mean? So we're going to try to answer all of your questions. We have a ton of policies and procedures, but that is what makes us so effective at what we do. And following those procedures and making sure that we're all on the same page about how to handle certain things is why we can accomplish these big events where we assist so many people and where we utilize so many volunteers. As you guys know, the Citizenship Day event is being held here at John Jay. There's a gymnasium upstairs where it's actually 2 gymnasiums opened up into one ginormous space. Just ginormous is a legal term, actually. No, just kidding. In this case, it is. On Saturday, June 30th, the hours for volunteers are 9 to 5. We have people come early so that we can provide a day of orientation so that you can meet the staff, so you don't feel pressured. If you haven't eaten, you can have coffee. We are going to go over all of these policies and procedures again because it's a lot to absorb. And we are adding a new component this year. There's going to be a separate call for volunteers for this piece. We're having an immigration resource fair. It's going to be outside and on that landing. We wanted to provide the opportunity for people and their families who are coming to get naturalized, but also members of the public. It's open to anybody to attend the immigration resource fair. We're going to have different representatives from New York City agencies. For example, the NYCID people will be there. They're bringing their equipment so that they can issue NYCIDs, ID NYCs on site. An appointment is not needed for that event. Anyone can just walk in and walk around. An appointment is needed, though, for the citizenship event. So in case you want to spread the information far and wide, just so you guys know, we do ask that people make appointments when they're coming to the citizenship piece, but the immigration resource fair will be there all day. There's going to be popcorn, there's going to be face painting, there's going to be goodies. I hear there's a DJ, and a registration link for volunteering on that day will be emailed to you guys shortly, or you can also visit our website. So the goal of our events, the reason that we do things the way that we do, that we've honed this policy and this procedure over the course of time, is sort of as follows. We provide pro se assistance. That means that people are filing on their own behalf. That means that we are not their lawyers, we're not their representatives, we're not attending interviews with people, we're not receiving mail on people's behalf. The people who can receive services from us are a specific group. There's definitely people who need representation or advocacy at interviews, and we assist those people with consultations and we point them in the right direction. But our scope of services is really focused on pro se assistance. And the goal of the events is so that anyone who is eligible and prepared to apply can receive a completed naturalization application on that day and walk out the door with all of the information that they need for any next steps or any information that's missing. We give them an envelope to mail it. We want people to have as many of the barriers to filing as possible removed so that when they leave, they can make a copy of their file and feel comfortable knowing about all of the next steps in the process. All of our services are free. There is no charge for any of the legal services we provide. People who are not eligible for fee waivers do have to pay the fee to USCIS, but the legal services are free. We have lots of different roles, and we're just kind of clarifying some of the people that you'll be seeing, some of the staff members, and clarifying some terminology. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, the word participant. You guys have heard us say that a lot. That is the name for what we call the people that we assist. We don't call them clients. We don't want there to be confusion. And we're going to, besides hashtag, it depends, that's the other word that you're probably going to be hearing the most from us.
Thank you, Tamara. So for the most part, for those who have been involved with us before, many of the things are pretty much the same. There are minor changes here and there, as this particular event on June 30th is larger than our usual biweekly citizenship application assistance event. So listen up. You guys will be seeing a lot of people with throughout the event with blue and red sashes, just like a Miss Universe, right? For those who are going to have red sashes, are there to be, you guys are going to be the event flows. I will be going the event flows, roles and responsibility later on in this particular presentation. But in terms of our supervisors, they will have a blue sash throughout the entire event. These station supervisors are composed by both staff members and experienced volunteers. Station supervisors are located, or they will be located in each station. Each station will have its own supervisor. Usually for our biweekly events, we have 3, 4, sometimes 5 supervisors depending on the number of participants and volunteers. For this particular event, we're going to have double of that number for obvious reasons. Our supervisors will provide a brief orientation before we start assisting participants the day of. So as soon as you get there, as soon as you get here, it's going to be here, the mega event will be here. I will be giving a general orientation, for you guys, so that we can all be on the same boat. If there's any changes, I will be, providing that information to you. Then after that, you will go to your designated stations for that particular orientation, more specific on your role and responsibility for the day, provided by your station supervisor. Besides those station supervisors, we also have legal services supervisors and also an event manager. These folks are the most experienced and the most knowledgeable of them all. They are the supervisors. See it as the supervisors because they have the last word. Legal services supervisors have the last word in terms of legal services, while the event manager will provide or has the last word in terms of logistical concerns. We don't expect you guys all to know everything. I have almost 3 years here and I'm still learning. But if you have any questions, any doubts about anything, just raise your red paddle that's going to be available on top of your table. A supervisor will be there to answer whatever uncertainty that you might have. I do have to highlight the fact that your safety is one of our main concerns. So if for any reason you feel unsafe or threatened or uncomfortable with either a participant or another volunteer or even a staff member, let one of the supervisors know. Let me know, Tamara, Monique, anyone from the event management team. Let us know so that we can take care of it. Alrighty. Let's go to the next slide. What you guys are seeing here is the citizenship event flowchart. Which is pretty much a breakdown of how the event itself is broken down, right? In order for us to provide high quality services, we need to divide everything in steps, okay? Before I go over the different stations, I do have to highlight the following. Our participants call for an appointment, and when they call, we provide a pre-screening. What does this mean? This is simply us preparing them for the event itself to ensure that we utilize their time effectively as well as us. Remember, we want to assist more than a lot of people. A lot of people. Yes, they also, we send them a checklist, an email, a confirmation email with a very detailed checklist. And within the checklist, we also provide a citizenship prep sheet, so they can start writing, the date of birth and different addresses and confirming, writing down or recording the trips, because we don't want them to come to the event and for them to, to have them call their tias and tios and grandmothers to confirm those information. Again, we want to utilize time effectively. When they arrive to the event well prepared, the first station they're going to go to is the participant registration form, which participants are going to arrive and sign in. When they sign in, they will be receiving a folder that's going to contain or have resource materials as well as intake forms. In the slide, they're called the registration forms. To pretty much track or gather their demographic information. Once they have the folder, they're going to be sent to the waiting area where volunteers and staff members will help participants fill these intake forms, right, before they go to screening, because these intake forms must be completed before they get to screening, which is the next station. Once participants arrive at screening, the screener will pretty much, long story short, determine the participant's eligibility to, to naturalize and to proceed during on the day of the event. If they get a yellow sticker, which you guys will be learning in just a second, they will be sent to the follow-up station. But if they do get the green light, the green sticker, they will proceed to the application assistance station, where, of course, majority of you guys might be there to help them fill out the application itself. And once the application is completed, then they will go to the checkout station or checkout, and for us to wrap up and to, tell and inform the participant about the next steps. What you're seeing here is pretty much the blueprint of the event itself. We have set it up in a way, to accommodate everyone. As I said, we are recruiting more than what we usually recruit during our biweekly events. Just in the application assistance station alone, we will be recruiting 105 application assistants. That's excluding people from checkout, screening, event flow, people who are going to be in the immigration fair, because we are going to have that, as Tamara mentioned. Things to highlight from this particular slide: if you check, let's start with the application assistance station. There will be 3 resource tables. Those are literally the library. You're to go. Whenever you need any documents, you go there for those to get those documents. Okay? Checkout will have 1. Screening will have 2. Realize how every station has waiting areas. So every station will have its own waiting area, and we will have some event flows, which I will be explaining your roles and responsibility in just a second. But yeah, long story short, this is pretty much for you guys to see the bigger picture. And now what we're going to do is we're going to break it down in pieces. We're going to talk about the different documents as well as your roles and responsibilities.
I probably have the least exciting job right now, which is to tell you about our administrative forms. But secretly, I love our administrative forms. Why? They provide a wealth of information. They're how we communicate with each other kind of internally without taking the time to go walk and, let me walk over to where Luis is and ask him a specific question. Everything you need to know will be on these forms. So we want to give you a sense of what we use them for, why they're so important, and a reminder to you that none of the people that we assist should go home with these forms. These are all internal for us to bring back to the office to, come up with the demographics. How many people from the Bronx did we see? Were there people who are under 18 who may become citizens? We can gather all this information from this yellow form that we're showing you right now. We call this the participant registration form, the PRF. You're gonna hear this acronym a lot. It is the front page of the document that participants get when they sign in. It must be completed in its entirety. We have blue folders on the table. That is where the completed ones will go. Screeners are going to retain this, and the participant is going to proceed through the event. We've also included a folder of Monique sorting these. We have a Meta Monique moment. Hashtag Monique. Page 2 has our limited legal services agreement. This explains we're not your attorneys, you're representing yourself. All the information that we're assisting you with is based on true, accurate information that you provide, you the participant. It explains, you're responsible for mailing, you're responsible for attending all of your interviews, excuse me, and we have a copy that gets given to the participant as their copy to retain for their records, and we also have a copy that we keep, which is just attached to the back of the form. The document has at the bottom, if people are interpreting in another language, translated to me by, put my name, and you can put Haitian Creole at the bottom. We only have it available in Spanish, but if you've translated to somebody, please note it at the bottom so that we can go back and say, you indicated here that you read and you understand. The next form is the case notes form. This is another form that I get a weird sense of enjoyment about reading. This is the pathway for, is this person eligible? What did they bring with them? We write these questions on the case notes form to mimic the eligibility criteria, but also the documents that participants will need. For example, we talked earlier, both Sean and Luce highlighted that sometimes if people don't bring all of their passports, it's not a big deal. There are other documents that are a big deal. For example, if you do not bring your criminal dispositions with you, then we can't assist you at all. We can't even make a determination if you're eligible or not, because we don't want to go there without looking at the documentation. So this form gives us a way to write all of that down. This follows the participant throughout each station. Each set of volunteers that work with the participant have a place to sign. Sometimes, as you can probably imagine, it gets chaotic and there's participants who kind of wander from place to place. They don't realize that they've skipped a station. We can easily look at the pink form and see, oh, you may have missed having your application completed. Let me lead you back there, or let me find someone who can take you to exit the event because you have a red sticker on your form. And if you see anyone leaving with this form, grab it from them. We've included a photo here of people sorting these forms. These are really important. When we get back to the office, we look at these, we see, how many people did we assist, how many people were able to proceed through, did we prepare people adequately with whatever documentation that they needed, did they bring their fee waiver documents with them. We also figure out, what are the big issues that people are having if we, are seeing people with missing fee waiver letters. Is it because we're not preparing them, or is it because the fee waiver letters are not being issued correctly? We can kind of determine that by going back at the office and looking at these. And also if a participant calls us and says, hey, I had no idea that I was supposed to have a disability waiver. You never told me that. And I've been sitting here, without filing my disability waiver. And we can say, okay, when did you attend? Let's look you up. Let's look at your case notes. We can say, oh, I can see by the notes here that you were advised that you have to get a disability waiver. Let's get you an appointment at our office so you can go ahead and get one of those. So the pink form and the yellow form, super important. Don't let anybody leave with them, and make sure that people are signing their names at every station. If you get a case notes form and it doesn't have the screener's name on it, make sure you raise your hand for a volunteer to go back and get the person who screened them so that they can sign it. There's a space at the top for screeners to print their name. There's spaces for the stickers. We're going to talk about the stickers in a minute. I'm pressing the shift key and wondering why it's not moving. The screening supervisor section is so that we can do a double check on some screeners who aren't as experienced. It has the assessment section where we explain the stickers there too. It's kind of a quality control measure. It helps us identify, very, very quickly if this person could be assisted or not, if they had to go home, what the outcome was, do they need an appointment at our office. This is the sticker chart that we've been talking about so much. This is another shorthand that we have for, is a person eligible? How many applications did we see? We total these all up at the end. The green sticker means that they're both eligible and they have their documents with them. There's nothing, missing. The screener and the supervisor at the screening station put this on at the end of their assessment. The red sticker means, for whatever reason, they're not eligible to get an application completed that day. Alan used to worry that people with red stickers would feel like they're never eligible to apply. But I clarified for him, it's just an internal thing that we have. This means that the person couldn't be helped today, but it also can mean that there are some people who, shouldn't, they just got out of prison for murder, and murderers cannot ever naturalize, unfortunately, and for some reason they showed up at June 30th instead of, going to the casino and celebrating their freedom, and they want to know now, can they naturalize? And unfortunately, that person is going to get a red sticker the same way someone would who is eligible but forgot their citizenship application, but they're going to have two very different conversations that day. The blue means that someone at screening has completed a fee waiver for them. We only do fee waivers based on means-tested public benefits. I'm reiterating that again. They're the easiest to complete quickly. You only need one piece of evidence as long as that evidence is good. Anybody else who needs a fee waiver for any of the other reasons gets an appointment back at our office. So they can have their application completed at the event, but they will do that second part back at our office because that takes a lot more time and more evidence and more conversation. And the yellow sticker just means that we have to send the person to our follow-up appointment station. We have staff there who can make appointments, electronically to our offices. We have spots reserved back at our offices for people who need, a second appointment. They have, to get XYZ document and bring it back with them. There's also a lot of other resources that we have available. The LPR Since chart means that we have a sticker chart on every table so that everybody remembers what red means, what green means. But on the back, we also have the date that someone had to have become a permanent resident. So remember, people can only apply after 5 years or 3 years, depending on which criteria. And so you don't have to remember, was 5 years ago 2011? Is that more than 5 years? That's me. I can't do math in my head for anything. You can refer to that chart so that you remember what date. We're talking about this date or before. You had to have your green card before. More about the case notes. This is the back page of the notes, and you see there's a section for every person. And I'm highlighting here the application assistance section because most of you will probably be at the application assistance station since we need so many of you. There's a little reminder list that you should fill out in addition to any notes. Did you remember to include the A number on every page of the N400 form? Did you remember to list all of the trips? Did you include all the necessary riders? This is a reminder for you, but also for the participant who has everything spread out all around them and you're gathering everything back together and putting it together so that they can be seen at the next stop. Please do not forget to legibly write your name on this also. We need to know that out of the 300, 400 people we're seeing that day, did that person sit down with someone and get their application completed? So super important.
Let's see how I'm going to do this in less than 5 minutes. Before I go over the roles and responsibilities, please note that you will be receiving an email at least a day before of the event itself with your role. So the email will have a confirmation of the time, the arrival time, the address, as well as your name, and next to your name, we will include your role for the event. For my event flows, Mami, escucha esto, que yo sé que vas a ser una de ellas. I just said that my mom to pay attention because she's going to be an event flow the day of. Event flow, I describe you guys as the veins of the event because you guys will be making sure that participants have smooth transition from station to station. And while you transition them, you help them go from screening station to the application assistance station. You guys are also in charge of making sure that their green cards and other supporting documents that will go along the N400, we have a copy of that. For my event flows, please ensure to, we're going to locate you guys also at the different exits so that we don't have participants leaving with the pink case notes nor the participant registration form that Tamara has already explained. For our event flows, you guys are also going to serve as translators. A lot of you guys speak our core itself, in total, we all speak over, I think it's 50 languages, making us, as I mentioned earlier, the largest and the most diverse team in the citizenship team. So yes, so that's actually your main roles as an event flow for our screeners. Immediately after you get or you receive and you greet the participant, ensure that the DOU, the Declaration of Understanding, and also the PRF, the participant registration forms, are completed. And once that's completed, ensure to rip one of the DOUs and give a copy to the participant. The rest, we keep. As a screener, you have 3 important responsibility. The first one is to ensure to determine their participants' eligibility to naturalize. 2, determine their eligibility for a fee waiver, and if they are eligible for a fee waiver, then you would do 3, which is complete the form itself. Once everything is completed and you have filled out the pink case notes, raise your question paddle and have one of the supervisors come to sign off. We cannot release them until a supervisor checks that everything has been filled out. And when the supervisor gets there, these are the things that he or she will be doing. The supervisor will review the case notes, confirm, and further analyze the participant's eligibility for both and the naturalization or the citizenship and the fee waiver. Besides that, the screening supervisor needs to fill out a particular section of the pink case note that's strictly for them to, answer all the relevant questions. And lastly, once they have determined and confirmed their eligibility and have reviewed the fee waiver application, they will then direct participants to go to the next station. A screening basic will be available to all of our screeners. Screening basic sheet is going to be located on top of your table. Try to read that before and after a participant. Before you ask supervisors questions, ensure or make sure to read that, because a lot of your answers will most likely be there. This sheet, it's pretty much going to state all the things that you have learned today. It's going to go over the sticker guide, the LPR codes, the different type of sheets that is going to be available for you, the do's and the don'ts. Besides the basic screening sheet, you guys will also have available other documents to provide for participant, because we have anticipated the participants' need to make sure that we prepare them for the next steps. We have prepared documents that has a list of the list of our offices throughout the 5 boroughs, the list of the different courts where they can get disposition letters if that applies to them, how to get Medicaid or food stamp in detail. These documents are available in Spanish only. If you speak another language, would you like to translate for us? Just hit me up. Just let me know. These documents are also available in the bins, the blue bins that are going to be on top of the resource tables, as well as inside a blue folder that will be also available on top of your table. Okay. If a participant receives a yellow sticker or a red sticker, ensure to fill out an acknowledgement of services document. It's going to be also available in the folder as well as in the bins. Long story short, this sheet is there to write down their names and the outcome or the reasoning on why he or she was either not available or needs an appointment. As a screener, ensure that we do indicate what sticker, add a sticker to their pink case note, because that will indicate where he or she will go next. And also ensure to fill out the follow-up needed section on the pink case notes. Once the participant, or if the participant gets a green sticker, please direct them to the event flow, that the event flow will go ahead and take them to the participant, to the application assistance station, and ensure that we make copies for them, either on their way or while they wait to be assisted. And once participants get to the application assistance station, as Tamara mentioned, majority of you guys will be stationed there. You will make sure to complete the N400. Ensure that the N400 is readable. If you don't have a neat handwriting like myself, please let me know. Unfortunately, we don't have computers, and we'll figure things out. Ensure that that the participant has all the documents piled up, all the supporting documents together, so that when we send them to the checkout, the person who's going to be wrapping everything up has everything all in one packet. Ensure to sign the application assistance section that Tamara mentioned in the back of the pink case notes. And just have in mind that participants are going to spend majority of the time with you guys at this station. You guys will also have a basic sheet. It's called the application basic sheet. Again, it's going to include everything that you have learned today, things that you guys, the do's and the don'ts, to identify other documents, and just to refresh your memory overall. Writers will be provided. As you all may know, a lot of our participants have a lot of, let's say, a lot of trips, and we would need more than whatever section the N400 has to track those trips. So we have prepared these writers for additional or information that needs to go along the N400. We have writers for children, for employment in school, taxes, and so forth. These documents will also be available in the bins.
The last stop is checkout. This is where we do a final review. This is the most important station sometimes, not only because somebody is walking out the door, but because oftentimes the participant has revealed something to you guys at the application assistance station that now the last person is sort of putting all the pieces together. We have an internal rule that if one of us has screened the person, that we cannot check that person out. We want at least 3 separate sets of eyes on this application. It's a different setting than in an office where you can slowly take your time and, spread everything out over an hour. We have, lots of different, eyes on the application just to make sure we have good quality control, that everything is filled out, that nothing is missing. And also at this station, we're preparing people for when they leave us, what to do next, what their next steps are. They get a timeline. They will find out all the information that they need from when they leave us up until their ceremony. We just want to highlight what we give to the participants to you guys, because often you'll get questions, how long is this going to take? Once I file, what do I expect? When do I go for my fingerprints? All of the resources that we have available, we want you to make the participants aware, their families. Our folders that say, I am on the path to citizenship. If you open up those folders, you're going to find information about how to obtain documents. You're going to find the timeline. You're going to find website information. We want this to be able to be something that a participant can take with them to their interview, and it'll keep all of their documents together for them. We also have a naturalization guide. It includes study materials. It includes eligibility information, even some interview preparation questions. And the lovely woman who is pictured here is from USCIS. She is their community liaison. She is usually present at almost every event with study materials that are provided to people for free. There's CDs, DVDs, flashcards, books in all different languages. You can also order these for free, and she's also there to answer people's questions. Some people are worried that their English isn't great. She'll have a conversation and say, hey, listen, there's nothing to worry about. Or, I have this particular situation. She'll let you know what USCIS's position is on that. And we also, need to remind you guys, we need to ensure people's privacy. We have Social Security numbers, A numbers, addresses, all kinds of things on these documents. Sometimes people leave things by mistake. Sometimes they complete an N400 that's totally illegible, and you have to keep it and rewrite it. We shred everything. We have a bin that we collect everything in, and we shred it. So don't just throw it in the trash or throw it on the ground. Make sure that we dispose of it properly. Final reminders. Do not forget to sign in and out. This is how we keep track of who's attended events, so we can do things like reward you for your attendance. Some people come to us because they're fulfilling pro bono requirements. We need to keep track of the number of hours. So do not forget to find a staff member who can sign you in and out. This year, we're utilizing different colored t-shirts for volunteers and staff. Please note your t-shirt size. I usually get my husband's t-shirt size. This year I have to get my own because we're going to be identifying, there's going to be so many people, we're going to be having bright t-shirts so you can see who's a staff member easily, who's another volunteer. And most importantly, I'm going to leave the last bullet for Luis. I'm not the fun person, I'm the policies and procedures person. He's the fun person.
So yes, make sure that as soon as you get to the events, get your name tags. Name tags will also have a circle, little circle with a particular color. The color will identify the language that you speak. Red, I believe, is for Spanish, and so forth. All I have to say is follow us on Instagram. Once again, it's Citizenship Volunteers. Citizenship Now Volunteers. And let's have fun, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have another Q&A session with Stephanie and Sean right now. We're going to send our staff members to collect your questions. Once again, you can ask about any topic we discussed if you have questions about any of the policies and procedures. We are also going to invite you, after you leave the room and you return your paddles to us, I forgot to mention you should also leave your plastic name tag holder with us because we would like to recycle those and use them again. Please feel free again to use the social media booth, take photos, and we're going to get started with...
All right, so I'll start. I'm assuming the 82-year-old person is a lawful permanent resident and not a citizen, because that's the only reason we're asking. Okay. So it depends.
Hashtag it depends.
Yes, I know, right? Well, you're going to hear that a lot, by the way. So generally, if a person has been out of the country for 1 year or more, they can generally come back and re-enter, but when it comes to applying for citizenship, they're not going to meet the requirements for how long they should have been in the country. So they may have to wait 4 years and a day. There are exceptions to that rule. However, if you stay out of the country for too long, there are times that you're actually not even permitted to re-enter with your lawful permanent resident status. You may be required to basically waive that at the time of entry, and you basically are going to be forced to re-enter as a visitor. Generally, 3 years is not the period that we expect that to happen, but once you start going over 2 to 3 years, you run the risk. You want to add anything, Sean?
No.
All right.
Can I use the fee waiver to renew my green card as well as put in an application for an N-400 at the same time?
Go.
Yes, only one I-912 fee waiver application needs to be completed for both.
If a participant speaks no English and won't qualify for the interview in Spanish for 6 months, should I recommend that they wait?
So,
This is an it depends question.
I know. So it depends. So when you submit, at the time that the person is being interviewed, if they meet the requirements, they should be able to have it not waived. It's not really waived. They're going to take the test in Spanish rather than English, so it's not really necessarily waived. That being said, if they get the interview before they meet the requirements, we're going to have a problem. And if they paid for the application, they would have lost the fee.
Yeah, I think this gives rise to the issue of should we be helping participants that we are fairly certain may not pass their English exam, and whether it's ethical for us to help these participants or maybe guide them to free ESL classes, or what the best recommendation at the time is. Ultimately, I believe, I don't know about the others, I believe that we should encourage our participants to not apply until there's some reasonable certainty, but if they ultimately insist, we're there to help them. So if they insist on applying, we probably will give them the warnings and, complete their application.
Agreed.
What should I put if my participant is Hispanic and has two last names?
Whatever name is their actual legal name.
You know, and that raises a good point. You're going to have applicants with two first names, two middle names, some of them 6 names. You have to, if it's not clear to you what they are, please just ask them. Which 2 are your middle name, which 2 are your last name? It's very common.
If the LPR was 7 months outside of the U.S. because he had to finish his education and received his diploma, is that a good reason for which evidence he needs to provide at time of NETS?
I'm going to take that one.
I also think, I personally don't believe it's a good enough reason, but it's on a case-by-case basis. I don't think you can say that, I wouldn't necessarily say that's abandoning, your residency, but our experience is that USCIS will not view that as, really an urgent circumstance enough to preserve the residency.
Yeah, and keep in mind, the consequence is simply waiting 4 years and 6 months. And so eventually they will be able to meet the eligibility. But yeah, if you leave with so at the time you're leaving, if you're going for education purposes, you're intending at the time to leave to stay there for 7 months. And that becomes the issue. The times where the exceptions apply are when you leave with the plan to return prior to 6 months, and then something happens that extends it. But to the extent that at the time that you depart the country, you already know you're going to be out of the country for more than 6 months, you should be requesting
Entry permit.
thank you. Everybody seems to know. Re-entry permit.
Everyone was listening.
Exactly. Thank you. But yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I
That's
just want to say one more thing about school. We recently saw a case where USCIS denied citizenship to a spouse who had gone abroad to study for a few months, saying that did not qualify. That ran afoul of the resident. You have to live with your spouse for 3 years, and that. So with education, they seem, if you have a question like that, chances are that USCIS will not, grant that. Okay.
My spouse and I have lived here for 10 years undocumented. We have 3 children born in the U.S. One child is very sick, and healthcare in our country is very bad. Can we apply for a green card based on hardship for our children?
You want to double team this one? All right, so I'll start. Hardship. So if you're undocumented and you end up in deportation proceedings, this kind of hardship is very likely going to provide an opportunity for you to get a green card. As when you're starting off, though, submitting an application, hardship itself is not sufficient. You need to be eligible for the green card through some other means. So if one of the children is 21 or over, then, 21 or over and could petition for a U.S. citizen, that's fine. If you're eligible to get the green card if you're eligible to get the green card through some other family member, that's fine. But if you're not, and then you end up in deportation proceedings, then this hardship can kind of come in and potentially give you a way to get the green card, even though ordinarily you would not be able to. Do you want to add anything?
No, I don't. No, that's fine.
All right.
If someone gets divorced, would they be considered unmarried if their parent petitions for them?
That's your question.
So the question is, if somebody gets divorced, if at the time of the petition they're divorced, they're unmarried. But if they were married at the time, if they were, let's leave the answer at that. It's as simple as that.
You want to just repeat that one more time? To clarify.
At the time of the petition, they were already divorced, then they are considered unmarried, right? So.
And
That's it.
if you guys remember, just bringing it back to the very first presentation of the day, that is a very specific category that could knock people out of getting a green card. Under 21 and unmarried, or over 21 and married and unmarried, those are all really specific questions. That's why it's so important and so hard to answer.
Okay, this has 3 parts. If someone was detained or deported twice, can they legally return to the U.S.? If the last deportation happened within the last 3 years? And are there any loopholes or path for citizenship?
So I'll start. It depends, and it depends. I think the most important information I would need in order to accurately answer that is why were they deported? There are some offenses that make you deportable, that leads to deportation, that are permanent bars to a green card. So if the reason they were deported to begin with was a permanent bar, we already have that problem. Secondly, if you are deported and then you reenter unlawfully, that has its own issues, and that may lead to an extended bar and potentially a permanent bar. And in addition to all of that, if they did initially get deported for a reason that would not be a permanent bar, sometimes re-entering unlawfully would lead to it. So unfortunately, I don't have enough information to give a specific answer. Do you want to add anything?
I was going to say, we would really need to know the reasons for deportation on a question like that.
This will not come up on Citizenship Day, hopefully, just to clarify. That is beyond the scope of Citizenship Day, but it is a question that we do get asked at our offices.
I do want to add, on the application, there is a question about, have you ever been removed or placed in removal proceedings? Those are not necessarily reasons to worry that you won't get your citizenship application approved. So a person can have been placed in removal proceedings, and those could have been canceled, they could have won their case, whatever reason. So it all just depends, you know.
How can someone help their sibling receive a green card or become a citizen? Would you please answer the question in Spanish as well, if possible?
Oh, boy.
Wow. Can we
Say-
invite
can
Wilfred
Yeah,
to?
repeat.
Introducing Wilfred Zamora, translator, attorney, friend,
We're calling a friend, by the way.
And mentor, by the way.
mentor.
So the answer is, if you can petition for your sibling, you as a U.S. citizen can then file a petition for your sibling. You are considered in the lowest priority category, so there's going to be quite a bit of wait, and right now that wait is approximately about 13 years.
Yep.
So, yeah, hi, welcome to immigration. There's a long wait. It's going to be a long wait. So you can help your sibling out in that way. If you're a U.S. citizen, by the way, an important point, LPRs cannot petition for their siblings. That's a privilege reserved for U.S. citizens. So U.S. citizens can petition for the sibling. After approximately 13-year wait, then they can become green card holders. And just like you have to crawl before you walk and walk before you run, you have to be a green card holder, generally speaking, before you become a U.S. citizen.
En español.
And in
And
Spanish.
now en español. Bueno, siendo ciudadano americano, un ciudadano americano, ahí solamente ciudadanos americanos tienen el privilegio de solicitar hermanos y hermanas en sus países que están actualmente viviendo en su país de origen, pero son considerados en la prioridad más baja en las leyes inmigratorias. Entonces, ¿qué significa eso? Eso significa que ahorita hay aproximadamente una espera de casi 13 años para que una persona en esa categoría, y repito, esa categoría viene a ser hermanos y hermanas de ciudadanos americanos, hay ahorita una espera de casi 13 años para que ellos se puedan ya presentar e entrevistar para la residencia de los Estados Unidos. Y una cosa que quiero que tomen ojo es que solamente ciudadanos americanos pueden pedir a hermanos o hermanas. Eso es un privilegio solamente para ciudadanos americanos y no es para residentes de Estados Unidos. Es decir, que residentes de Estados Unidos no pueden pedir a sus hermanos y sus hermanas. Eso es una propuesta, pero actualmente la ley permanece en la manera que le acabo de explicar.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Wilfred.
Do they have to be a certain age, or can they be married and still petition?
They could be married and you can still petition for them. And if we want to get even technical, there's derivative benefits, which we can get over. Come see me afterwards.
Thank you, Wilfred.
This is about taxes. A married couple, one is an American citizen, both are retired. For the past 10 years, they have not filed taxes because they have been told that they don't need to. The non-citizen wants to apply for citizenship. What can he or she do?
I'm just going to say that anytime there's air quotes told,
Get nervous?
Well, we verified during the session today, the IRS has no limit to how far back you can go to file taxes if you haven't. The IRS has an internal rule that they will prosecute anybody within the last 7 years. You can, but here in this case, they haven't filed 10 years worth of taxes. I think they show up at their interview and they better, the question
Are they
is, they haven't
unemployed?
filed for 10 years?
Retired, unemployed.
Retired.
They're retired and unemployed, and,
Yeah.
you know,
I thought they didn't file.
They are retired now, but they haven't filed.
Oh,
they haven't filed, including for when they were working.
Right. And someone told
okay.
them they didn't have to.
So, okay, no, even when you're retired, you have an obligation to file taxes, okay? So that someone probably gave them some very bad advice.
there is probably the most confusion, other than sometimes with criminal convictions, about taxes and tax law because it's so complicated and the numbers change every year. Just to put in a plug for South Brooklyn Legal Services, they do a ton of work with low-income taxpayers. Their website is amazing if you guys want to learn more about the crazy world of taxes and immigration. It's also an area of law where you don't have to be an accountant the way that you have to be an attorney to provide legal advice. Anybody could be a tax preparer. Some people don't realize even that there are immigration consequences to bad tax advice. So this is a very common area where there's always questions, and people, are constantly getting terrible advice, and there's definitely ways to correct certain things. So feel free to, ask questions and read up more on the subject, because there's a lot of information out there that's really helpful and, kind of gets rid of some of the questions. South Brooklyn Legal Services, they have a low-income taxpayer clinic.
Excuse me? But this can be remedied if you have some IRS representation?
Sometimes
No, up to 10 years you can do it.
there's ways to remedy the situation, the gentleman was just saying.
And a lot of penalties can be removed, and you will have to pay some penalty and whatever is due to be paid, either in lump sum or in installments. But only after the approval, only then they should apply for citizenship.
That's a good point, because USCIS is going to defer to whatever IRS is. They're going to check with IRS. If IRS is good with you, USCIS is probably going to be good with you.
But always 5 years is the best. Because IRS goes normally up to 6 years.
We can have people come ask you questions after the presentation, because you know a lot more than most of us do about taxes. Let's just move on to a few more questions.
I only have time for one more, and this is my favorite one. How soon can a petitioner who filed for their spouse file for a divorce?
Well,
How soon? Okay, I'll take this one.
go ahead.
Okay.
You're welcome.
This sounds
It's a very
like-
real question.
This sounds real fishy, and the answer is not a good one. How soon? As long as the marriage was legitimate at the time that they got married, you can divorce the next day, the next week. Now, this question brings up the possible of marriage fraud. Okay, so there's all sorts of, loaded things in here.
It could also
But
bring
in a
up a question about if a spouse was maybe abused, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah, exactly,
another set of
exactly.
eligibility requirements. It's a very real question with lots of potential answers or caveats.
So
It depends.
A divorce, as long as the marriage was on the up and up, a divorce will not hamper, generally, a person's ability to naturalize.
Just like a quick question, a quick thing though, which I advise people all the time, is when you go to the interview, the officer will ask more questions if they see that the marriage was for a very short period of time. So one of the things we want to be clear is that they were actually honest. And so If the marriage was less than 2 years at the time that they initially applied for the green card, their initial green card would have been a conditional card, which would have been only valid for 2 years. And so it depends on if they properly disclosed everything, and then, because it's a higher standard if you're already divorced in less than 2 years to get the conditions removed than if you're not. So, he's 100% correct legally. However, you want to make sure that at the time they were removing the conditions, they didn't just flat out lie, put on a fake signature and imply that the marriage lasted, right? You want to make sure that they disclose timely exactly when they divorced, the divorce, copy of the divorce documents were submitted, especially if the divorce was done abroad, by the way. Go ahead.
If they marry, with green card granted, citizenship granted, 5 years,
Good, done.
and then US, you find out that the marriage was end. And they take away the citizenship, yeah.
Technically, legally, but I don't think I've ever seen that, because
Yeah.
chances are you're not going to be, unless somehow you end up in front of immigration, but generally your relationship with USCIS or Department of Homeland Security ends with the citizenship. But theoretically, to the extent you got the green card through fraud, which led to you getting the citizenship through fraud, the citizenship itself can be revoked and you can lose status altogether. Yeah, I don't see any scenario where they would discover, by the time you get the citizenship, I can't think of a scenario where they're going to find out that you wrongfully got the green card unless you present yourself before. So either, I guess the spouse can say, hey, I lied and I want to confess and start an investigation. But even then, it would be, you'd still have an opportunity to provide a defense.
Monique? Is there a fee waiver available when you're petitioning for your relatives?
No,
Okay.
sorry, that's it.
What happens if a participant does not remember the day of the month their employment started and ended? And what happens if there's a gap in employment that's due to a job change and it's only a few days?
Okay.
Must that be accounted for?
A few days, probably not. I think if you wrote the exact dates and there was only a few days in between, it's not going to give rise to any questions about what you were doing that time. You could just say, vacations last more than a few days. The first part of that question was?
What happens if they can't remember the exact date that the employment started and ended?
Okay, so like we said earlier today, exact dates are not necessarily needed. We encourage them to probably go back home and see if they can figure out at least the month they started. That would probably be best in that case, probably just narrow down the month. Ultimately, look, if they don't even remember the month, they could just write down the year and then just be prepared to explain it, when they have the interview.
Remember, also, people are going to have to produce their taxes. So if things are not lining up in a negative way, that's different than someone just, not remembering. You can write approximately, you can write fall 19, no, that's too far back. Fall, whatever 5 years ago was.
If the participant's application is incomplete at the event and they still need to go home to get more information, do we still date the application and have them sign on the day of the event?
It depends on the information they need. So if it's simply a matter of they don't remember exactly the times that they worked and they have that at home, that's fine. If they don't remember, I don't know, whether or not they were actually divorced before they remarried, we might not want to date that application. So it's going to depend on whether the information they don't remember goes to whether or not they're actually eligible to proceed with the citizenship application. Do you want to add anything?
No, that's perfect.
I just want to add one thing. The reason that we're laughing about it depends, but we keep talking about it depends, is because sometimes there really is no black and white way to do immigration law. There's lots of different things that'll work. There's different answers for different people. Each practitioner has their own style of how they fill out things sometimes. One of the reasons why we emphasize so much to ask questions is because we don't expect you guys to have all of the intuition or the experience of doing this. Even different staff members have to ask each other, what would you do in this situation? Or how can I, should we let this person go through? Sometimes there's just really no clear answer. So hopefully after you've done these events for a while and you've kind of built up your arsenal of how to ask questions, how to get information out of people, how to make sure people have things completed, you'll feel more comfortable giving the answer. It depends.
How many times can an applicant be eligible for a fee waiver? If the applicant failed the exam, can they reapply again and apply for another fee waiver?
So yes, so long as you continue to meet the eligibility requirements, you will always be able to file a fee waiver. If you fail the test, as soon as you get a response, you can reapply. We do encourage people to try to remedy the issue prior to simply reapplying, even if it is free, because there are lots of people who need appointments, who need our services, and every time we assist a person and invest that time for an application that we know is very likely not going to be approved, we're unfortunately very likely turning away a person that could have been approved. So just to, keep in mind that the resources are limited, and we don't want to keep doing an application over and over again that's going to be denied, because it's just not a really good way to use these very valuable resources. Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, we see that sometimes. We'll see somebody, the fourth or fifth application, and they're not really doing anything to help their cause, except they're getting a fee waiver. And if they had to pay $725 each time, we wouldn't be in that position, so. No.
Can a U.S. citizen help his or her siblings becoming U.S. citizens if they're under 18?
So, no, a person can only derive U.S. citizenship, so I guess there's two potential questions you're asking. If a person is under 18 and their parent is a U.S. citizen, there are some circumstances where the person automatically becomes a citizen by the operation of law through derivation. A U.S. citizen person can petition for their sibling, but you're helping them become a lawful permanent resident, and then 5 years later, they themselves can apply for citizenship. That's it. Anything to add?
No, I mean, they have to wait till they're 18 before they can become a citizen.
Yeah.
There's no way for that sibling to become a citizen sooner from the sibling relationship.
Lawful permanent resident.
For permanent resident, yes, but not for a citizen.
All righty. Someone previously had a green card. Her daughter stayed abroad for a number of years because she was going to school. So the mom overstayed 6 months. Upon returning to the U.S., the immigration officer took away the green card. The mother left the country and returned home. If the person now has a U.S. citizen person that can petition for them, are they able to get a new green card?
So generally, yes. However, I'd be cautious about that, because it sounds like if the person only overstayed for 6 months, that is a very short period of time to have the green card removed. So there's a strong likelihood
More than one time.
Oh, thank you. I was a little bit nervous. Okay, so yes, if the only reason they lost the green card was because they overstayed, those are the type of cases where I think I was asked the question where someone said, if you're deported, can you re-enter? So we said it depends. So if the only reason you lost your green card is because you previously overstayed out of the country, those are one of the clear cases where you could just get it again when somebody else petitions for you who's eligible to.
All righty.
One on one time, like you went 7 months and then you came back and then you went again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I came to the United States 2 months ago as a permanent resident. When can I change my last name, and how can I apply for my mom?
So,
It's a continuation of that other
Yeah.
divorce question, maybe?
do you want to take it, or you want me to?
Yes. How soon can a permanent resident change their name?
I am not aware of any
Restrictions.
restrictions on changing your name like that, so.
Not through the immigration process,
Yeah, not through-
probably.
Yeah.
It would be my guess about the question.
And one quick thing about that, if the person plans on petitioning for their mom, they're going to have to make sure they maintain the record of the name change, because to the extent, I mean, technically speaking, you don't have to have the same name with your mom, but you want the birth certificate name to at least, so it depends on what name they want to change. If they're married, they have a completely different name and they're changing the name back, we want to make sure that the name on the birth certificate has a link, whether it's a change of name certificate, to whatever name they have now. Does that make sense? We don't want a birth certificate with a name and a completely different name on the petition for the parent that is nowhere else, which I have found, right? You're petitioning for your parent, you need to show, if the name on your birth certificate is very different from the current name now, we want to see when and how that name was changed.
Do you have any questions, Will?
Sure. I thought a good question to highlight the 3-year versus the 5-year rule. If applicant is married a USC, a U.S. citizen, but no longer living with spouse, is she banned from applying for naturalization, or can she apply after 5 years?
No, she just goes to the 5-year rule. So if you move out, or if you're no longer living with your spouse before the ceremony, you just wait. Now you have to wait until you are eligible on your own at the 5-year, under the 5-year rule.
Oh, I can ask another, sure. At the risk of raising another tax question, what if failure to file taxes is based on income being below the threshold to file? Would that hurt your chances of becoming a U.S. citizen?
No. In essence, the law requires that if you are required to file taxes, that you do. If you're not required, then not filing is not a problem. But you must disclose that you didn't. That's all.
We have time maybe for one short question, if that's even possible. They all have very long answers.
Actually, no. Yep. This should be short. If someone has entered the U.S. undocumented, has lived in the U.S. for over 20 plus years, what would be the first step to get naturalized?
I got a good question.
Do you really?
Good to say?
Same exact question.
There you go.
So that is
So
actually.
it's a good thing we end on it.
Yeah, so that's,
20 years, undocumented, what would be the first step? Just
you want to say
pray.
it together?
Yeah, just.
Getting a green card. First, you got to get the green
First to get the
card.
green card, and, yeah.
Person entered onto someone else's documentation.
I don't have that part. I don't have that
See,
part.
that's not a short.
The reason why I think I highlighted the question is because, again, showing you got to crawl before, you walk and walk before you run. There's no such thing as jumping from undocumented to naturalization. There's got to be, there's an intermediate step.
And we'd hope that if there was a possible way to get a green card for this person, they would have found it in 20 years,
Ideally,
right?
yes.
And chances are very, very slim. Of course, we can try to work with them to see if there's any possible way, but, even if and then the problem is, even if there is a way, then you have the problem of, coming in uninspected, overstaying, I'm sorry?
Entered with the wrong name, somebody else's documents.
Yeah. Somebody else's documents.
There's a few issues.
Yeah, that's probably not going to work.
Okay, Monique has a really good one.
All right.
Last one.
All right. If I filed my citizenship application and I ended up moving while the application is still pending, and I notify USCIS, how can I be sure they will process my address change?
Oh, so you can file for the address change by doing a Form AR-11, which you keep a copy of, and to the extent that you do that timely, and here's the thing, you need to do that as soon as you move, or as soon as possible after you move, because you don't want them to send you documents for you to file the change of address after they have already sent you something that you missed. But to the extent you do everything timely, if USCIS actually sends the documents to the wrong old address, you can either have the case reopened, or you can request that they resend you documents without paying for it. So long as you act timely, by the way. You can't wait 4 years and then later say, oh, by the way, I never got something. Go ahead.
No, and with the online change of address and verification, you can verify pretty soon after.
Yeah, immediately.
Almost immediately that it did go through.
Here's a question. In case where this woman was here, she overstayed her visa, she married a American citizen, and she was denied LPR. And her son is 21, petition for her, she got the green card. So what is the gray area here? She didn't get the green card to the marriage, but she got it to her son who is 21 years after.
The marriage may have been the issue. Maybe she didn't have sufficient evidence to show the marriage was bona fide. One of the requirements to get a green card through your U.S. citizen spouse is to show that the marriage itself is bona fide, i.e. it's real and not just for the purposes of getting a green card. So that sounds like perhaps the marriage itself was the problem, yeah.
Okay, that
It is
is
5
it
o'clock.
for 2018's mega training for the mega event. Thank you all. Thank you to the presenters. Thank you for putting up with me. Just please be sure not to leave with your paddles, and please be sure not to leave with
There
your
are
name
boxes
tag.
by the door. Please drop the
Thank
paddles
you.
off in the boxes. Also, we are still running the I Am an Immigrant campaign by social media. If you want to stop by, take a picture. We'll be featuring the photos and the videos on our Facebook and Instagram page throughout the month of June. Okay?